Chapter 631. I Surrender. Just as Liszt expected, when he passed through the encirclement of many knights and stood in front of Count Heron, this earth-attributed sword saint threw away the sword in his hand. A wise man submits to circumstances. I'm beginning to admire you. Then I'll have to trouble you to stay in prison for a few days. Let's both think about it carefully for a while, then we'll discuss the issue of your ransom. Liszt said gently. The other party did not resist, so he naturally would not lose his elegance. At this point, at nightfall, a battle with a predetermined outcome quietly ended, and the castle's prison was overcrowded. Liszt sat on the main seat of the castle hall and ordered, "Commander Marcus, send someone to inform Sir Messiro and let him arrange for orders of chivalry to come and take over Egret Castle. This castle is located at the intersection of the Three Dragons River and the Roaring River. We must treat it carefully to ensure the smooth flow of the Golden Waterway." "Yes, sir." Marcus accepted the order excitedly. He was fortunate enough to know Liszt's plan, so he was in a state of excitement for the past few days. The merit of seizing the iron mine was destined to benefit a large number of knights, and he was almost certain that he would be promoted to a noble and become a lord knight. Because the merit was too abundant, he might be promoted to a baron in a few years. Liszt was not a stingy lord. He had always been generous with the merits of his subordinates. Marcus was well aware of this. Liszt, who was sitting on the main seat, took a sip of tea and said, "Everyone, although Egret Castle has been breached and the Three Dragon City has become our resource collection ground. But you must understand that the Three Dragon City and Egret Castle are not our ultimate goal. Rest for a night and we will continue tomorrow." "Yes, sir." "Then go and rest. There will be no dinner party. When the real goal is achieved, you can enjoy the banquet every day and the abundant merit will make you go crazy." The regiment commanders of the Orders of Chivalry, who were greatly encouraged, bowed respectfully and left. At this time, a bat flew in from the window and quickly transformed into Bloody Mary, who was wearing leather clothes and a black cloak. She had already put on Tubert's cloak, and the wide cloak completely covered her voluptuous figure. She had decided to use her ability to get ahead, not her beauty. Of course, the main reason was that beauty didn't work. Her personal style began to abandon her charm and became serious. "Sir, Mary is reporting to you." "Yes." Liszt was a little disappointed with the conservative Bloody Mary. Although the female vampire was old, her figure and skin were well maintained, and she was still pleasing to the eye. He slightly regretted giving her Tubert's cloak as a reward. It would ruin a beautiful scene for no reason. "We've already sealed off Egret Castle, including the tunnels to the castle. We've already killed a few knight and rats who tried to send messages. Currently, Hamel and the rest are still sealing off all the exits to ensure that no news from Egret Castle is leaked." "Very good." Liszt stood up. "Next, hand over the sealing mission to the Orders of Chivalry on night duty. We'll begin the hunting plan." Bloody Mary unconsciously licked her lips. "As you wish, sir." The dark night was the favorite environment for vampires. There was no sunlight, only endless shadows, which allowed them to move freely in any corner. The Triple Dragon City was about 250 kilometers away from the Dragon Lock City, separated by a large mountain range. One of the mountain ranges was called the Coiling Dragon Mountain. There was a huge valley and an iron mine. As for where the iron came from, it could be seen from the name of the mountain. There was once an iron dragon like the Numb-Mouth Iron Dragon or the White-Mouth Iron Dragon. It was trapped here and continuously infected the mountain range, finally producing a large amount of iron. Famil Black Knight was tasting a virgin in a castle in the Coiling Dragon Mountain. He was a supervisor who supervised the iron mining in the Coiling Dragon Mountain. This was because his master, Alonso Cyclamen, was riding a bronze dragon to the border battlefield to confront the Dragon Knight of the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom. The family's Orders of Chivalry had also gone to the border to participate in the war, so he could not escort the caravan transporting the iron mine. Therefore, a large amount of the mined iron was piled up in the valley, waiting for the war to end before being transported. Even within the Eagle Kingdom, there were still mercenary groups who would take risks out of desperation and raid the iron mine. Behind these bold mercenary groups, there might be other Dragon Knight or Dragon Knight candidates. Or it could be the forces of the old Marquis or even some royal families, vassal countries, and enemy countries secretly supporting them. The Eagle Kingdom, which had been established for nearly 1,000 years, was no longer harmonious. Just the internal strife and struggles would consume a lot of energy. In addition, the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom constantly launched wars every year, not giving the Eagle Kingdom a chance to breathe. Although the pirates of Sapphire were weak, they were like maggots in the bones, always sucking blood and eating meat. the seemingly powerful kingdom. In fact, it was getting harder and harder to maintain such a huge territory. However, this did not prevent Famer from leading a befuddled life in the coiling Dragon Mountain. As a pureblood of the Black Knight family, he enjoyed a lot of resources and absolute power from the family. Tasting a few virgins outside was not a big deal at all. In fact, he and his pureblood partner were playing on their own. Just a few seconds after he started to move, there was a knock on the door. However, he ignored it. In the coiling Dragon Mountain, even the two Sky Knights stationed there did not have as much power as he did, because he was Alonso's eyes. As such, after a minute, Famer's body trembled for a while before he stopped moving. At this time there was another knock on the door. He was lying on the bed and answered with some waning interest, "Come in." The one who entered the door was his follower, a mixed-blood vampire. "My lord, Lord Tubert sent Bloody Mary to visit you. She is waiting in the living room." "Tubert? Didn't that guy go to Sapphire? Did he finish the task so quickly? Go get Bloody Mary." Bloody Mary quickly came to the bedroom. She was not curious about the girl lying on the bed. She looked directly at Famer, who was half-dressed in his pajamas. "My Lord Famer, Lord Tubert has returned from Ironhoof Island. He is currently recuperating in the mountains not far away. He suffered some minor injuries on Ironhoof Island. Why didn't he come to the coiling Dragon Mountain Castle?" "Hee, my Lord Famer, you must be joking. This is your territory." Famer was very proud. "Haha, Bloody Mary, your mouth is so pleasing. Tubert would definitely not dare to come to my territory. He is afraid that I will eat his heart. Speaking of which, if I did not let him go 10 years ago, how would he have the chance to become a pure blood?" "You're right, my lady. Master Tubert would like to invite you to the opposite mountain for a while. He has made some progress in his investigation on Ironhoof Island and hopes to discuss it with you before deciding on how to report to Prince Alonso. This is his keepsake." Bloody Mary handed over Tubert's keepsake that she had prepared beforehand. At least he knows the rules. Chapter 632. This chapter is to reward and update the leader of the guild, Battle Song of the Gods. Speaking of which, Battle Song had changed his smuff to reward the leader again. Vampires who walked in the dark, especially powerful purebloods, relied on their blood magic, bat transformation ability to escape. They would almost never encounter a situation where they were trapped and killed. Therefore, Famer Black Knight did not take any precautions against Bloody Mary's message. He immediately transformed into a bat and followed behind Bloody Mary, flying towards the mountains opposite Trap Dragon Mountain. A moment later they arrived in a dense forest. Just as he was about to land and transform into his human form, a large net was cast over his head. Famer's reaction speed was not much slower than Tubert's. He instantly exploded into countless bats and fled in all directions. However, the sneak attack still caught most of his avatars. Sizzling sounds of burning and frying could be heard. Only 4 bat avatars managed to escape. At this time List, who had cast the net, had already transformed into flames and directly extinguished one of the avatars. He then rushed towards the second one. At the same time, Scarlet Peggy and Blood Hamill pounced on the third bat, while Night Demon Wimbledon and One-Eyed USO pounced on the fourth bat. Bloody Mary was trying hard to control the bloody net to prevent the avatars from breaking through the magical equipment. After crushing the second avatar, List turned around and crushed the third and fourth avatars. He returned to the position of the bloody net. Dragon's fighting energy erupted and crushed the avatars in the midst of their screams. All the blood magic of the avatars flowed out and condensed into Famer's body. He was more straightforward than Tubert. He was already dead. The Dragon Knight plotting against a vampire was purely a strong man bullying a baby. List took the handkerchief from Scarlet Peggy and wiped the blood on his hand. He signaled Bloody Mary to dig out the heart and retrieve the equipment before the blood magic of the corpse dissipated. The harvest was bountiful. A pureblood vampire's heart was condensed with surging blood magic. The blood servants stared at it with their eyes wide open. 3 mixed blood vampire hearts in a box. An evening gown that was exclusive to vampires. It was a short sword that looked like a stiletto. It had the same name as Tubert's dagger. Both of them were magic equipment inherited from the Black Knight family. The only difference was that they had different shapes, but their functions were basically the same. A blood mask, a reincarnation ritual book and a blood extraction needle. A finger-long tooth of some kind of beast, also some kind of magic equipment, filled with rich blood magic, a whip covered with spikes and an amethyst ring. List pinched his heart. Famer's 3 followers, the Demoness Phoebe, the black-robed man Vansa, and the fanged Seth quickly rushed over. Through Bloody Mary's threat and description, they successfully joined the ranks of the blood servants. Among them, Phoebe the Enchantress was Famer's confidant and knew his equipment very well. This tooth is the Fang of Super Warcraft, Bloodthirsty Bat, a magic equipment passed down from generation to generation in the Black Knight family. Not only does it greatly increase a vampire's cultivation and spell casting, but it can also be used to perform a blood exchange ritual to improve the purity of a pureblood's bloodline. List raised his eyebrows. Super Warcraft? What does a bloodthirsty bat look like? I've never seen one, my lord. The Black Knight family has a long history. No one knows if this bloodthirsty bat's Fang is from Super Warcraft. Phoebe's appearance was average, but what was extraordinary was her towering breasts. This whip is called the Wailing Whip. It's mainly used to liven things up. Skip it. Tell me about the amethyst ring. I don't know the name of this ring, but its function is to make people full of energy and greatly increase their magic recovery rate. It's a very good piece of equipment. List was very satisfied with the amethyst ring and did not hesitate to put it on his left index finger. In the customs of the Grand Duchy of Sapphire or the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom, there were only two ways to wear a ring. A man's left middle finger and a woman's right middle finger signified an engagement. A man's left ring finger and a woman's right ring finger signified marriage. Any other ring on any of the fingers was simply a decoration or equipment. It was not uncommon for a wealthy knight or magician to wear rings all over their hands. He activated the amethyst ring with his chi. Immediately, he felt a mysterious power being transmitted from the gem into his body. His body gradually felt an indescribable vitality, as if every cell in his body was boiling. Every type of gemstone was filled with amazing power. He then looked at Bloody Mary. The hunting plan this time was very successful. Mary, you've done me a great service, so I naturally will not mistreat you. From now on, this Tubert's heart belongs to you. However, I don't have the time to supervise your cultivation and conversion. You can absorb this heart after we take over the Coiling Dragon Mountain. Bloody Mary suppressed her excitement and replied, I'll follow your arrangements, my lord. Everything I have is a gift from you, my lord. List was satisfied with this attitude. He looked at the other 7 blood servants. Famer's heart is in my hands, but it is of no use to me. As long as you work for me loyally and make enough contributions, it will belong to you. I have a mission for you now. From now on, watch all the exits of the Coiling Dragon Mountain. Do not let a single messenger escape. He paused. List casually tossed Famer's heart into the air. As long as this mission is completed, not only will this heart be yours, but all of this equipment will also be yours. That includes Phoebe the Enchantress, Vansa the Black, and Seth the Fanged. Yes, my lord. We will do our best to complete this mission. Bloody Mary took the lead and knelt on one knee. The other blood servants followed suit and knelt on the ground. In this pitch-black forest. It was very strange. The weather was still so hot in the middle of August. List, who carried the calming bead with him, enjoyed air conditioning wherever he went. Earl Lee William envied him. Masiro's orders of chivalry came quickly, and he quickly took over Egret Castle. List led the newly replenished 800 elite mixed knight on a journey across the mountains. With the blood servants leading the way, the journey was relatively smooth. Finally, they arrived at a place not far from Coiling Dragon Mountain at nightfall. They rested for a night before launching their assault. Famer's departure did not cause any ripples. Phoebe the Enchantress, Vansa the Black and Seth the Fanged were able to maintain their duties as supervisors. Not only that, under Bloody Mary's instructions, they transferred away many of the knight's surveillance posts. Just before List was ready to charge, they assassinated many of the Sentinel Knight's guards. This time, the iron mine at Coiling Dragon Mountain was exposed to the spear of the mixed orders of chivalry. Charge. At dawn. With List's roar, the battle officially began. His gaze went past the orders of chivalry stationed at Coiling Dragon Mountain, and found the 2 Sky Knights who were rushing to meet the enemy. In his eyes, they were not enemies. Chapter 633. There was nothing special about the battle. In short, List would shoot, kill, then shoot, shoot. The 2 Sky Knights guarding trapped Dragon Mountain were heavily injured and fell to the ground. The orders of chivalry also began to collapse. List continued to shoot the escaping knight, and the vampires continued to attack. In the end, the 2 orders of chivalry at trapped Dragon Mountain were completely wiped out. Some died in battle, the rest surrendered, and only a few escaped. Sir, I am very sorry. Some knight escaped through the small paths. We don't dare to chase them anymore. The sun outside is getting stronger and stronger. Under the scorching sun, our fighting strength is completely weakened. Bloody Mary returned to report. List furrowed his brows. But he did not complain. I understand. You can go and rest. Bloody Mary retreated. He looked at the piles of iron ore in the valley of Trapped Dragon Mountain and suppressed the surging emotions in his heart. He thought to himself, Trapped Dragon Mountain is not like Egret Castle. It is very difficult to completely block the news. The escaped knight will definitely spread the news. Otherwise, Alonso will probably find a chance to retreat from the front lines. The only plan now. They could only transport as much iron ore as they could. Once the Dragon Knight returned, they would immediately abandon the transport and escape. Of course, List only planned to stay at Trapped Dragon Mountain for 5 days to prevent the surrounding marquises from taking it back. 5 days was a safe time. If it was more than 5 days, he could not guarantee that Alonso would not return early. Before one could ride a dragon when facing a real Dragon Knight, one absolutely could not be cowardly and be stubborn. After clearing the battlefield of Trapped Dragon Mountain, the transport work quickly began. Marcus and the other orders of chivalry were constantly shouting for the captured knight. These knights were stripped of their equipment and driven to participate in the transport of iron ore. The mixed elite orders of chivalry were constantly supervising their work. The miners who were originally in the mines were also driven up and organized as transport workers. Cart after cart of iron ore was transported to the nearby Three Dragon River, waiting for the fleet to arrive before loading. The only ones who received preferential treatment were the 2 Sky Knights who could be exchanged for elves, as well as the 6 Master Minds. Master Minds were considered to be a type of architect. They were highly skilled in drilling and mining. List had always given preferential treatment to talented people, so the 6 mine masters were exempted from menial labor. However, they had to pack their belongings and leave with the fleet to his territory. Although his territory didn't have any mines to mine, there was no harm in hoarding such professionals. As for Mastermind's family, they lived in Dragon Lock City. Blood servants would be able to bring them back quickly. It was List's humane move to take these mine masters and their families with them. My lord, I've already sent a knight to Egret Castle to deliver the message. I believe that Sir Masiro will soon drive the serfs from Three Dragon City to transport the iron ore. Yes, Guild Leader Marcus. Help me take care of Coiling Dragon Mountain. Report to me immediately if anything happens. Yes, my lord. After Marcus left, he called for Bloody Mary. The battle is over. Now I'll give you this heart. I'll also give you your heart. Absorb this heart and train in front of me. Let me see how blood magic is trained. List threw the 2 hearts over and said calmly. Vampires had to put their hearts back when they trained. In order to prevent their subordinates from defecting, purebloods would personally supervise the training of mixed bloods. List continued this method. He didn't trust these vampires either. Bloody Mary held the heart and prostrated on the ground excitedly, kissing the tip of List's shoes. Bloody Mary will always be loyal to you, my lord. Then she began to train in front of List. First, she took off her top and exposed herself in front of List. It was a very erotic scene. However, before List could take a second look, Bloody Mary had cut open her chest and stuffed her heart back into her bloody chest. List's scalp went numb. In the blink of an eye, all the erotic thoughts were completely shattered. However, he still resisted the uncomfortable feeling and used the eye of magic to observe how Bloody Mary absorbed the heart. It seemed to be some mysterious blood magic that restored Tubert's heart from a magical state into magic runes, like the reverse form of a magic array. The blood servants hadn't completed the books on blood magic, so List didn't know much about blood magic. He lost interest after watching for a while. The whole absorption process was quite boring. It was just Bloody Mary sitting quietly and constantly casting spells to absorb the magic runes into her body. When Bloody Mary finished absorbing the heart, a day and a night had passed. She hadn't become a pure-blood vampire yet. She still needed some time to digest and absorb. After the absorption was complete, she dug out her heart and gave it to List. Compared with the previous heart, her heart now was much more crystal clear, and the blood magic power was much stronger. Taking the still beating heart, List couldn't help but ask, I'm very curious. You cut your chest like this. Don't you feel pain? My lord, pain is also a part of blood magic. Often, pain can make us feel better that we are still alive and not a talking corpse. Do you regret becoming a vampire? I don't have any regrets. I was forcibly converted into a vampire by Tubert. It wasn't a choice I could make, but it feels good. At least I can keep my youthful face after becoming a vampire, and the feeling of being able to fly freely is also very beautiful. List couldn't understand her feelings. He could already fly now, whether by himself or by riding on a bird. Also, his face had always been very young and handsome. When he became the lord of the draconic domain, he would probably be a few hundred years younger. As for the idea of immortality, he wasn't very strong. A few hundred years would probably be enough. There was no point in living too long. Indicating that Bloody Mary could leave, he stayed alone in the study of the nameless castle, looking through the Earth Attribute High-Level Chi secret book, Meteorite Impact Wave, that he had collected the day before yesterday. This was found in the bedroom of a Sky Knight stationed here. The book was damaged and it was obviously read every day. And this high-level Chi secret book was the reward of the smoke mission. Mission completed. Reward, high-level Chi secret book, Meteorite Impact Wave. The mission was completed when the Orders of Chivalry surrendered, and a new mission followed. Mission: this expansion order has achieved brilliant results, and the iron ore will continue to be harvested. Next, it is time to carefully discuss the ransom of the captured knight and the future serf trade. Please wait patiently for the end of the war. Reward: unknown reward. I really should think about how to end it. List through the meteorite impact wave, directly into the gem space. I captured 5 Sky Knights, 2 ordinary, 3 Sword Saints, and 1 shamelessly wanted to follow me. The results of this expansion order are enough for me to eat for several years. At this time. Chapter 634. Traces of a Powerful World of Warcraft. In fact, from the time he arrived at Trap Dragon Mountain to guard the iron mine, List had been sending out Knight to search the surrounding mountains all day long. In the name of searching for possible signs of an enemy knight, he actually wanted to find intermediate and advanced World of Warcraft. He had been longing for a World of Warcraft mount for many years. Grand Duchy of Sapphire World of Warcraft was rare. Few Knight rode World of Warcraft, and Knight rode a horse on the battlefield in order to charge. Only a Sky Knight would ride a variety of World of Warcraft on the battlefield. For example, the huge tiger that Marquis Wildtao rode before was a Wind Intermediate World of Warcraft, Megaloconus Tiger. However, intermediate and advanced World of Warcraft generally inhabit the depths of the primeval forest. Orders of chivalry or mercenary groups to kill them were already very difficult, let alone capture them alive. Even if they were captured, it would be difficult to tame them. When List captured the low-level World of Warcraft, Stupid Woman, it took a lot of time to erase its wildness after Dosen used his body to conquer it. Although Stupid Woman didn't hurt people now, it was still very difficult for it to accept List's orders. If a low-level World of Warcraft was like this, then the intermediate and advanced World of Warcraft could be imagined. List could have a Blizzard Beast team because Dosen was originally a low-level World of Warcraft cub, and it evolved after eating the bloodline fruit. If it was an adult Dosen, it would be difficult to completely tame it. As for the Chocobo Loki and the Rainbow Whale Lolth, it was probably the dragon bloodline that gave them easy to ride. Since a noble creature like the dragon could be ridden, it was obvious that the dragon bloodline would inherit this trait. Non-dragon-type creatures were completely different in World of Warcraft. When Marquis Wildwave attacked Little River Heart Keep, he was riding a middle-level World of Warcraft Giant Claw Tiger, but he did not fight alongside the Giant Claw Tiger. It could be assumed that he had tamed an adult Giant Claw Tiger. Moreover, it wasn't easy to catch a Giant Clawed Tiger, so it was even more difficult to raise a Giant Clawed Tiger's offspring. In World of Warcraft, who had a powerful bloodline, it was difficult to give birth. If World of Warcraft was so easy to catch and tame, perhaps the nobles of the Eagle Kingdom would have formed the Orders of Chivalry a long time ago. The World of Warcraft around Trapped Dragon Mountain would have been roasted and eaten by the 2 Sky Knights a long time ago. List was invited to capture World of Warcraft. In an instant he processed a lot of information. Of course he didn't say it out loud. He only mocked the Count's naivety. It wasn't as simple as finding a powerful World of Warcraft and taming it as a mount. At the very least, one had to be blessed by the Knight's glory to obtain excellent World of Warcraft mounts like Dosen, Loki, and Lolth. He walked out of the study. He still agreed to this hunting invitation. If possible, he would capture a World of Warcraft for the Count. This would save him the trouble of talking about mounts every day. When he looked at his mount, Dosen, Loki, and Lolth, his gaze would be strange. Father, if we leave Trap Dragon Mountain, will the defenses here be a problem? Don't worry, the eldest prince has already sent a Knight Ma-Ing to deliver a message. He is currently sending an elite Orders of Chivalry to support us. At the same time, he is organizing the fleet of various lords to support the transport of iron ore. We don't have to be so tense anymore. It's time to share the profits with others. I understand this, but the importance of iron ore is self-evident. If any of the lords nearby take risks for the iron, or wouldn't our battle achievements be greatly reduced? It's the knight's glory that no one wants to steal it, but it's not a bad result if someone steals it. In the past few days, we have transported more than 300,000 tons of iron ore. This amount of battle achievements is enough for me to become a marquis in 2 to 3 years. You will also have the resources to develop. Being too powerful isn't necessarily a good thing. The count had his own reasons. He only knew that List was an ancient warrior, a slayer from Arad. Although he could help his family rise, he still had to rely on the Dragon Knight to survive. That was why keeping a low profile and developing steadily was a good thing. List couldn't deny this. He didn't mind helping Llewellyn become a marquis. He could also become a count and continue to follow Llewellyn. He didn't want the Grand Duke to see how outstanding he was and forcefully make him his follower. That would be awkward. After all, regardless of whether he was strong or weak, at least he was a Dragon Knight of equal status. However, the Count wanted to play it safe, so List didn't forcefully object. So the two left the nameless castle together and met up with Messiro at the Orders of Chivalry's camp. List, are you ready? Let's go catch a big guy. Messiro walked over and patted List on the shoulder. There was always a sense of unreality. His timid nephew, who was once unpopular in Tulip Castle, had actually grown to become a top expert, reaching a height that even he, the heir to the Marquis, had to look up to. The difference in rank didn't give him any advantage at all, because List was destined to become a Marquis in the future. As a powerful ancient warrior, the title of Marquis was the highest treatment that the Grand Duchy of Sapphire could provide. Fortunately, Messiro could still talk to List as an elder, but he also had to maintain a relationship with List through familial affection. Marquis Merlin was on the verge of death. Before Meopel grew up, the Taro family's rule on Red Crab Island urgently needed List's support. Otherwise, with the little princess' powerful background, Red Crab Island might change its surname from Long Taro to Sapphire in a few years. Especially so far, the little princess Belly had not moved. Divorce was obviously impossible. Who would dare to abandon the Grand Duke's daughter? The most likely result was that the family's bloodline would be replaced. At that time, the only one who could uphold justice for the Taro family was List. Messiro had considered this issue more than once. Just as he was in a trance, List had already asked. He didn't know what his uncle was thinking, but he knew that his uncle was very enthusiastic and was definitely trying to rope him in. This feeling was actually pretty good. Looking at the accompanying retainer knight, he said to Xavier, "Go find Emily and tell her to follow me to the forest to hunt." "Yes, sir." A moment later, Emily rushed over on horseback. The body of a 12 or 13-year-old girl was in the puberty stage. She grew taller almost every day and was now almost 1.7 meters tall. Her talent once again amazed List. Unexpectedly, after fighting and killing a few times, she had touched the bottleneck of chi. She had become an elite Earth Knight. If he didn't know that all of her training resources were provided by him, List would have really suspected that Emily was the one who had obtained the ancient warrior's inheritance. "Sir." Emily respectfully saluted. List nodded faintly. He was getting more and more interested in nurturing her, but he still had an indifferent expression on his face. "Emily, follow me to hunt. Remember, watch carefully and learn well." Emily excitedly replied, "As you wish, sir." Chapter 635. Llewellyn and Messiro continued to search for traces of World of Warcraft, while List lazily taught Emily how to train and how to fight. Although he was not a Dragon Knight and was only an ordinary Sky Knight, he had fought many opponents. Especially with the help of the powerful dragon's combat energy, he could calmly observe how other Sky Knights fought. Using scientific methods to summarize, he had not only written List's geodesic manuscript, but he was also pondering List's skywriting. In the field of knight training, he believed that he had advanced ideas that surpassed the entire era. Emily was a very good student. She was smart, persistent, and did not like to complain or talk nonsense. She had always maintained a humble and respectful attitude towards Llewellyn. Attitude was especially important. List did not like arrogant people, and he did not like geniuses who thought they were great. The reason why he did not like Lytton was that Lytton often revealed his arrogance as a genius. No one could call themselves a genius in front of List. You need to take potions in the elite land. When the expansion order ends, I will provide you with enough potions when you return to the territory. Also, you need to carefully study List's Earth Codex. It will guide you on how to take potions and how to break through the shackles of cells. Yes, sir. Also, you need to learn archery. This is the standard of a knight. However, my multiple arrows is not suitable for you. I will choose an archery teacher from the elite Earth Knights to teach you other types of archery. List's multiple arrows relied on the gem space to open an infinite bullet plug-in. That was why it could unleash such great lethality. A casual shot could fire 3 arrows. An ordinary knight with a bag of arrows would not be able to use it more than a few times. In his opinion, the author of the multiple arrows secret manual must have obtained a space gem. Otherwise, he would not have invented an archery that consumed so many arrows. If it was only for the realm of dual arrows, then the multiple arrows would be a good choice. However, he had expectations for Emily not only as an elite Earth Knight. Emily did not ask why. Yes, my lord. Also, if your arithmetic isn't good, I can help you measure your body's resistance and adaptability to the potion. Only by taking the potion scientifically can you obtain the most benefits with the least consumption and break the shackles of the earth as soon as possible. Yes, my lord. Emily no longer thanked List verbally for his kindness in nurturing her. In her heart, she had already determined that everything she had belonged to List, and a few simple words of thanks were meaningless. Devoting herself wholeheartedly to Sir Lord was the focus of her life. To the Count's regret, the entire hunting team eventually lost track of the powerful magical beast, and they did not find any useful clues until it was dark. After a whole day's journey, apart from killing a bunch of low-level World of Warcraft, there was only one intermediate World of Warcraft, Spiky Porcupine. This spiky porcupine was of the thunder attribute and had a strong attack power. List used his dragon's battle chi to forcefully break through its thunder and lightning armor and then knocked it out. He asked the Count if he needed this spiky porcupine as a mount. Looking at the long, sharp spikes on the back of the spiky porcupine, like a knight's spear, the Count fell into deep silence. After returning to Hungry Dragon Mountain, plates of delicious spiky porcupine barbecue were served at the dinner. The Count picked up a pork chop and chewed it up with the bones. What a pity. List ate the spiky porcupine's thigh meat and expressed regret. In fact, by pulling out the spikes on the back of the spiky porcupine, it can still be tamed as a mount. Of course, there was no point in saying this now. It was better to eat. In this way a day passed. In the blink of an eye, List had been stationed at Hungry Dragon Mountain for 5 days, and it was time to leave. The Sunset, which participated in the transportation, had sailed upstream along the roaring river. Commander Marcus led the Black Horse Island Orders of Chivalry and was busy moving a large amount of plundered materials to the Sunset. The elite Orders of Chivalry sent by the First Prince had taken over the garrison of Hungry Dragon Mountain. The commander was a sacred swordsman, enough to support the next defense of Hungry Dragon Mountain. Viscount Garcia, Viscount Fox, when the Orders of Chivalry evacuate Hungry Dragon Mountain, your letter will be sent at the same time. At that time, once your family or the Lord sends someone to Ironhoof Island with a ransom, you will be free. As for now, you need to go to Coral Island as guests. Understood. The 2 Sky Knights replied weakly. They were both followers of Alonso Cyankali. They were not from a large family, but from the orphanage of the Cyankali family. They had not been promoted to Sky Knight for a long time, so they had nothing but 1 or 2 sprites. List had them write letters mainly to Alonso. He had Alonso pay the ransom at the price of 2 ordinary sprites per person, or 1 grain or World of Warcraft sprite. Robbing his iron mine, incorporating his knight, and now making him pay the ransom. List would not be lenient towards this possible opponent in the Battle of Dragon Slayer. The Sunset set sail. The 8 blood servants also followed and left. The 500,000 tons of Hungry Dragon Mountain iron mine had been transported away, completely handed over to the First Prince's Knight faction. The Count did not follow the Sunset, but instead rode Mesiro's court speedboat. The 2 stood at the bow of the ship, looking at Hungry Dragon Mountain in the distance, sighing with emotion. Mesiro said, "With our withdrawal, most of the remaining military exploits will be nibbled away by the many aristocratic lords. What a pity." Lee Williams smiled. "No one can take away the military exploits that belong to me." Indeed, List is powerful. As a Ghost Blade inheritor, he is enough to protect the military exploits that belong to Coral Island. However, List has helped you achieve such brilliant results at such a young age. After returning to the country, I fear that a large group of aristocrats will go mad with jealousy. Only those who are better than others will attract jealousy. My second son, List, is destined to become the cornerstone of Sapphire. They will be jealous now, but in a few years they will change their mentality because List will let them understand that jealousy cannot destroy a genius. Yes. Mesiro placed his hands on the railing. If List was still weak, obtaining the Ghost Blade inheritance would not be a good thing. However, he is already strong enough to protect himself. Even the Grand Duke will have to give him the highest degree of attention. Perhaps in a few years he will become a marquis like you and me. Chapter 636. The cries of apes could be heard on both sides of the river, and the light boat had already passed thousands of mountains. Although the sunset was not fast at sea, its speed was far faster than at sea due to the Three Dragons River and the Roaring River, even if the cabin was filled with mountains of materials. Soon it arrived at Little River Heart Castle. Little River Heart Castle held 3 sacred swordsmen. One was Deborah Rainflower, one was Count Heron, and the last was Yevich Rainflower. Marquis Wildtao sent someone to participate in the ransom discussion of the 3 followers. The final result of the discussion was that Count Heron would pay 2 grains, a magic ingredient sprite and an ordinary sprite. Deborah would pay 2 grains, a magic ingredient sprite and 2 ordinary sprites. Moreover, the sprite's lifespan could not exceed 50 years. As for Yevich, Marquis Wildtao had already given up and did not intend to pay any ransom for him. That's awkward, Yevich can't sell for a price. Levis was very depressed about Marquis Wildtao's decision. A sacred swordsman follower had been casually thrown away like cabbages. As a marquis you have no sense of civility, trash can't be thrown away. In fact, Yevich was equally embarrassed. He naturally understood that Marquis Wildtao would not pay much for him, but it was too humiliating for him not to even offer a price. He suddenly made up his mind. Sir, Yevich is willing to follow sir and start all over again, abandoning any identity in the Eagle Kingdom. As matters stood, he had become a burden that could not be shaken off. Liszt pondered for a long time and finally came up with a decision. You decided to start all over again. As benevolent as I am, I cannot help but give you a chance. How about this? I don't want your sprites, but they must be planted in my territory and given to me for safekeeping. As for you? Yevich had 2 useless water sprites and 14 sprite worms. Sprite worms had too few contracts and replacing them was too troublesome. Moreover, among them only 100 erect sprite worm could be planted, while 1 sweet potato sprite worm could be planted with the grain sweet potato, which was a bit valuable. It was not cost-effective to contract them, so it was better to use them as a tool to control the other party. Sir, please instruct me. Yevich has no objections. I plan to have you explore the sea and search for new habitable islands outside the Grand Duchy of Sapphire. Every island you find will be equivalent to a battle achievement. If you can find a big island like the Iron Hoof Island, it won't be a problem to make you a count. You should believe that I have the power to make you a count, right? Yevich answered without hesitation. I have complete trust in you, my lord. So you agree to explore the sea and find the island? Yes, my lord. Swear your allegiance. After the ceremony of allegiance, Yevich officially became a white follower of Liszt, and the title given by the Eagle Kingdom in the past had been abandoned. When the oath was completed, his identity would naturally change, and he would not be able to return to the past. An oath of allegiance under the watchful eyes of the public had a clear legal effect. Now that he was free again, Yevich did not know whether to be happy or sad. For a person, a sword saint, to end up like this, there was really nothing to comfort himself about. Furthermore, he was also disgusted by the war. He had been on the run for half his life and was getting worse and worse. It was better to explore the sea alone. He did not have to deal with the intrigues and fighting among the nobles. Looking at Yevich, who was somewhat dispirited, Liszt did not care. He did not want Yevich to participate in the Knights' War again, because this guy's character was not guaranteed. If he changed factions again, it would be a loss. He might as well send him to find a new island. In this case, without Liszt's support, Yevich would not be able to establish a foothold in the sea, and there would be no need to consider defection or the like. Moreover, he also needed a powerful knight to lead a fleet to complete the investigation for him and find a suitable island to establish a country on. Overthrowing the Sapphire family was just a record, and this option would only be activated when it was confirmed that the large guild had fallen out with him. He did not like that kind of life of fighting all day, and was more willing to establish a country on the island and live a life of peace. When he was poor and hungry, he would go to the mainland, just like the Sapphire family's development order. Especially after he developed new sailboat manufacturing technology, when the time came, he wanted to circle around the mainland, seize all the islands and establish his own power. Domesticating the mainland and turning it into his own private garden was just a thought, but it was too difficult to realize. To solve the problem of Yevich's followers, Little River Heart Castle also welcomed Marquis Wildtao's team to pay the ransom. The ransom for the 2 sacred swordsmen could be raised by themselves, but the Roaring Orders of Chivalry Knight needed Marquis Wildtao to be responsible for a large number of captives. The ransom had already been basically determined during this period of wrangling, and now it was only the handover. On Count Heron's side, his family brought 3 sprites. They were the cereal category wheat sprite, the sisal sprite, and the ordinary ornamental plant green bean sprite. Sisal was a cereal category and its value was very high. Not only could it be made into ropes but it could also be used as livestock feed. On Deborah's side he personally handed over the 4 sprites, namely the Coptis sprite of the potion category, the corn sprite of the grain category, the ordinary apple sprite and the turning white grass sprite. The apple sprite could grow apples while the turning white grass sprite could probably grow weeds. On Marquis Wildtail's side, not only did he bring a large number of gold coins, seeds and other materials, he also had to hand over 2 sprites. They were the tobacco sprite and the pine sprite. Tobacco was used to make cigarettes, and the pine sprite was a more commonly used wood, and was also a grain. All the sprites were contracted to List. Looking at the 9 sprites around him, one could imagine the excitement in his heart. War was indeed the best way to get rich. After farming on the island for more than 2 years, he had only obtained 1 big sprite and 6 sprites. But this time in less than a month he had obtained 9 sprites. If Yevich's 2 water peanut sprites were counted, he had a total of 11. The most important thing was, most of them were cereal and magic ingredient sprites. These sprites were even more valuable. If it wasn't for Alonso coming back at any time, I really wanted to stay here and continue to capture the Sky Knight for ransom. In a year and a half, I'm afraid the sprites will fill a room. List thought happily as he looked at the ransom team constantly pulling away supplies. The Count only had 1 big sprite and 12 sprites. And he already had 1 big sprite and 15 sprites, not counting the 2 water peanut sprites. It could be said that he became rich overnight. Late August. List, who was full of harvest, said goodbye to William before taking the Sunset out to sea. Father, I'll leave things here to you. I'll wait for your return on Coral Island. Go, although the war is not over, your development order is over. After you go back, practice on Black Horse Island. Don't worry about too many things and strive to understand the spiritual power of the Ghost Blade as soon as possible. I know. Enchantress Phoebe, Night Demon Wimbledon and One-Eyed USO will be under your command. Although their combat power is relatively average, they are the most suitable eyes. The Count looked at the 3 vampires wrapped in black cloaks. Okay, so, the Sunset weighed anchor. Chapter 637. On the sea the wind was strong and the waves were strong, but the Sunset was still stable. List sat in the bow enjoying the wind. The 9 blizzard beasts, sitting or lying, occupied the entire bow. Loki was more cheerful, flying up to the sky from time to time, then landing back on the bow. He took a batch of wheat grains with secret aroma from List and tasted them one by one. Not far away on the deck, Alvin Eaglesword was studying the Ice Soul Dragon slaying sword. As a family great elf soldier he was exploring the way to use it faster than List. The Ice Soul Dragon slaying sword has 2 attributes. One is to transform the nature of combat energy, transforming the user's combat energy into ice attribute combat energy. This is called Ice Revolution by List, and he is about to figure it out. He only needs the last step and a long period of familiarization to be able to use the Ice Revolution skill at will. The second is the Frozen Combat Energy domain, which will resonate with the Domain Knight's combat energy. This ability is called Frozen by List, and there is no clue as to how to use it. The Marquis of Wildtau has been trying for more than half a year and probably hasn't figured it out. It is impossible for him to learn it at once. Fortunately there is Alvin Eaglesword and Iron Knight. Although his talent is mediocre, his family's Iron Knight skills should not be too difficult to unlock the special ability of the Great Elf Soldier. When Alvin cracks the Ice Soul Dragon slaying sword, the Domain Knight will be no different from an ordinary knight in front of me. Drinking the warm Bampo milk, List thought. In addition, Alvin has decided to dedicate his family's Iron Knight skills to me. It is time to open an Iron Knight course under the Knight Academy. Since the future is destined to be a nation, then all kinds of talents must be trained in advance, lest a country be alone with only a few people. After drinking the Bampo milk in the cup, List took out a piece of roasted World of Warcraft meat from the gem space and ate it. Now, although he is not willing to expose the space gem, he is no longer so cautious. Even if the space gem is exposed, who would dare to snatch it? Even if the Grand Duke takes action, he is not afraid. At most, they would just fall out. Of course, the people around him were basically his followers and servants. As long as he avoided outsiders, no matter how much he exposed the gemstone space, it would not be easily leaked. Few people recognized the magical gemstone space, and most people did not even know or believe in the existence of the Holy Dragon. On the middeck of the ship, under Viscount Garcia's guidance, Emily was practicing the archery secret manual, guided arrow. As a high-ranking captive, he could walk freely in the designated area of the sunset. Plus, he was good at archery, so he took the initiative to teach Emily. Liszt treated him with good wine and meat, so of course he should return the favor. On the other side, Viscount Fox, who was also a captive, was also instructing a few other young knights. A series of battles ensued. 1/3 of the original 60 or so knights of the Black Horse Island orders of chivalry have been killed. Dying on the battlefield is the fate of the knight. However, the scale of the orders of chivalry did not shrink. Instead, it expanded to more than 120 members, and all of them were elite Earth Knights. With so many Earth Knights, Liszt would not have been able to afford them, nor would he have been willing to raise them. However, the ransom of this wave of captives allowed him to earn 9 sprites, including a Coptis sprite that produced potions, and 2 sprites that produced grains, wheat and corn. The potions and grains produced were basically enough to maintain this wave of expansion of the territory. When the iron ore shipment was over, Liszt also planned to ask the Count to help him buy 30,000 serfs. Black Horse Island was developing industry rather than agriculture, so it could digest a large number of serfs. As long as the food kept up, 100,000 serfs could be digested. The elite Earth Knight needs to be cultivated in order to form an elite orders of chivalry that belongs solely to me. Before I ride a dragon, I can figure out how to practice my chi domain. Although I am a dragon knight, there is no guarantee that the future generations will be mediocre. If they can't ride a dragon, then they can control the chi domain. He did not have a wife yet, but he was already worried about the future generations. Tap tap tap. The sound of high-heeled shoes hitting the ground. It was Bloody Mary, shrouded in a robe, who came over. Her pale face, hidden in the hood, had an abnormal blush. My lord. The magic eye was cast. Liszt saw at a glance that the blood magic in Bloody Mary was surging and had reached another level. You have successfully evolved into a pureblood? Yes, thanks to your nurturing, Mary has finally become a pureblood vampire. Very well, through your own evolution into a pureblood, I believe you have a new understanding of the blood magic system, which can provide more research information. I am already preparing to add this part of the information to the nature and development of blood magic. Bloody Mary said, holding her heart in both hands and handing it to Liszt. My lord, my training has come to an end, please continue to keep it for Mary. She took the heart. Liszt was more and more satisfied with her attitude and could not help but nod. I have seen your loyalty. Now I will give you this reincarnation ritual, this blood extraction needle and this blood mask. In addition, the hearts of the mixed bloods will also be given to you, and their training will be supervised by you in the future. He did not want to waste his time supervising the training of a few mixed bloods. Thank you for your trust. Mary will manage the blood servants well, and become your eyes in the dark night. Bloody Mary took the pile of items, bent down and kissed the tip of Liszt's shoe again. My lord, can I transform into a new vampire? If you want to transform, you can. But it must be voluntary, and no one is allowed to be forced to become a vampire. Bloody Mary replied respectfully, My lord's kindness is the happiness of the subjects. If Mary had met you, my lord, I am afraid I would have a different life. Maybe you will become a great mage. The corner of Liszt's mouth curled up. I have to let you know that although I am a knight, I have also done a lot of research in magic theory. I have written 3 books on magic theory, and there was even a mage in my territory who became a great mage because he studied my books. He was talking about Chrissy Truth. Strictly speaking, his magic books were indeed a great inspiration for Chris's advancement. Bloody Mary expressed her surprise perfectly. Ah, my lord, you also study magic? Your books actually helped a mage become a great mage? You really are a scholar. If you did not choose to train in chi and chose to train in magic, you would definitely become a great magic grinder. Liszt smiled faintly as if he did not care about this at all. He changed the topic. Not only do you have to manage the blood servants, don't forget to supervise the 3 great mages, Lars, Silair and Durak. They cannot pay the ransom for their freedom, so they have to work for me honestly. Chapter 638. This chapter is called, The Whale That Never Grows Up. Speaking of the 3 poor great magicians, Liszt suddenly remembered the map of the lost civilization that pointed to the unknown race. The map pointed to the sea near the coast of the roaring estuary. When the 3 great magicians found Yevich, because Yevich was also poor, They lied to Yevich that the ruins of the civilization were likely to contain a large number of ancient treasures. Yevich believed it and was ready to fund them to excavate the ruins of the civilization. We don't know if there are treasures, but as an unknown marine civilization, I believe there must be very valuable knowledge left behind. This was the answer that Lars Truth gave when List asked. He also wanted to trick List into excavating the treasure. But in fact there was no need for him to trick List. List would also excavate the ruins of the lost civilization of this unknown race. Taking out the hand-drawn map and looking at the 3 parts of the map, he couldn't help but want to return to his Black Horse Island as soon as possible. If he wanted to successfully find the ruins of the civilization with this map, he must rely on the siren Chi and the colorful whale Lolth. Otherwise diving would be a big problem. Unknown race, is it a siren race? There was no answer. He put away the hand-drawn map of the ruins and stopped thinking about it. Instead he looked at the sea. The holy water sword Yevich Water Peanut was working hard to learn how to swim. He was a person who lived on the mainland. Although he had water attribute Chi, he was not very good at swimming. He was about to serve as the captain of the expedition fleet. In order to adapt to life at sea, he would go to the sea every day. In the first few times he needed sailors to salvage him. Now he could swim back to the ship from the sea by himself, and his fear of the deep sea was gradually overcome. I like the sea. The endless blue color makes me particularly enjoy its depth and vastness. Although I was late for nearly 30 years, at this moment I found my true love. Yevich, who finished swimming, made an affectionate confession to the sea. However, in the afternoon, this confession was hurriedly shattered, leaving only Yevich's hoarse roar. My lord, let me go back to the cabin, I don't want to stay on the deck. The weather was sunny in the morning, but in the afternoon, it was stormy. Huge waves slammed into the surface of the sea, making the sunset like a small boat, unable to resist at all. The sunset was equipped with the water-calming pearl and the wind-calming pearl, but List did not let the captain open them. He wanted to scare Yevich and see if he had fallen in love with the sea. After a while, the water-calming divine pearl and the wind-calming divine pearl were activated at the same time, and the sunset regained its calm. Huge waves were still rolling on the surface of the sea 100 meters away, but they gradually slowed down and calmed down after entering the affected area of the wind-calming divine pearls and the water-calming divine pearls. However, there were still some waves on the surface of the sea that shook the ship. There were many people who had never been on a boat. For example, Alvin Eaglesword and the 3 archmages all vomited. Originally, with his strong physique as a sky knight, Yevich would not have vomited, but after being locked out of the cabin by List, he could no longer bear it. He lay on the deck and vomited. He vomited all the food he had eaten at noon, and his face was pale. After he was cleaned by several retainer knight and changed into a set of clean clothes, List met him in the small building of the tower. Yevich, the sea is so capricious. One moment it is gentle and the next moment it is cruel. Do you still think you like the sea and want to live on the sea? Yevich took a deep breath. He still replied firmly, yes sir. I'm not a good swimmer and I was seasick just now. The sea does have such a terrible side, but I am still willing to gallop on the sea. I once missed the opportunity to conquer the dragon, and now I don't want to miss the opportunity to conquer the sea again. How could a dragon and the sea be compared? List did not understand Yevich's brain circuit, but since the other party was not frightened and was still in high spirits, it meant that the expedition fleet could be entrusted to him. The sunset arrived at the port of Ironhoof Island on August 23rd. The port was very busy with ships transporting iron ore one after another. Stationed in Oxhoof City was the Marquis of Quicksand City, Nesta Grandflower Huilon, the brother-in-law of the Grand Duke. After receiving the news of List's return, Nesta personally met him at the port. Sir Marquis Nesta, thank you for coming to greet me. I am deeply honored. List performed aristocratic etiquette with great grace. Of course, it was not the kind of pious etiquette that a small aristocrat needed to meet a greater aristocrat. Instead, it was more of a battlefield knight etiquette, which well avoided the gap in status brought about by each other's titles. Otherwise, the etiquette that a viscount needed to show when meeting a marquis would make List uncomfortable. Nesta did not care about this. Being arrogant was the exclusive shortcoming of young people. He patted List's shoulder enthusiastically, young and promising, young and promising. When I heard the news of you in the country, I couldn't wait to rush to Heyuan in person and witness the battle between you and Marquis Nuteo. Sapphire has not had such an excellent young man like you for a long time. List smiled reservedly and did not answer. Nesta pulled him directly to the nearby castle. I wrote to the Grand Duke about you. In his reply, the Grand Duke praised you very much. Unfortunately, both of his daughters are married, otherwise he would definitely let them marry you. But it doesn't matter, my eldest granddaughter has just reached adulthood. You can get to know each other. Nesta's granddaughter was supposedly 1 generation younger than the little princess, which was 1 generation younger than List. But seniority was not important here. Marriage basically only considered whether the family was well matched and whether it was in line with the interests of the two families. List never had expectations for female aristocrats. Unless they were cultivated, he would not easily accept them. After all, the atmosphere was too open. He asked his subordinates to arrange the supplies for the sunset. List only took a few squires, Yevich and Emily, to the castle to attend Marquis Nesta's banquet. There were many aristocrats at the banquet. Most of them were aristocrats of the Blue Blood Alliance stationed on Ironhoof Island. This large island was temporarily firmly controlled by the Sapphire family. At the banquet, Marquis Nesta inquired about List's identity in a roundabout way. Soon he got a lot of information from the unsophisticated List about shipwreck, Mentor G.D., spirit power, ghost blade, and so on. They understood that List was favored by the knight's glory and actually obtained the inheritance of the Arad civilization. Whether they believed it or not, at least the atmosphere of the banquet was good. They flattered each other. Their ears got calluses from listening to them. No young aristocrats came to provoke List. In fact, since List became the youngest Sky Knight in the country, he had never encountered a young aristocrat who was stupid enough to provoke him. He was the son of a count and barely made it into the ranks of the greater aristocrats. Plus, he was not keen on socializing, so he saw fewer young aristocrats. Most of the young aristocrats who walked around were heirs of large families. They cultivated hypocritical communication skills, and most of them were only at the Earth Knight level. How would they dare to challenge the Sky Knight, the youngest Sky Knight in the country? So, the banquet ended in a happy atmosphere. Nesta still did not let List leave. Instead, he continued to chat with him to inquire more about List and promote his granddaughter at the same time. List was not interested in these topics. Instead, he asked, Marquis Nesta, do you know about a domain knight? Marquis Wildtau is a domain knight. I was almost killed by him. If it weren't for the instability of his Chi territory, I'm afraid it would have been difficult for me to come back alive. Chapter 639. There are a lot of perfect Sky Knights in the country. Basically, as long as the members of the Marquis family are not too stupid and useless, they can accumulate a perfect Sky Knight by relying on the accumulation of potions. But a domain knight has never been born. This is no longer something that can be accumulated. Nesta Magnolia revealed a lot of valuable information. Probably because List had reached a certain level, he felt that he could sell him a favor. The previous generations of Grand Dukes have tried to trade the legacy of combat aura from the Steel Ridge Kingdom, but without exception they failed. Is the price not high enough, or is it the technical blockade of the Steel Ridge Kingdom? You see the problem very accurately. Indeed, it is not that the Grand Duke is not willing to pay a huge price, but the Steel Ridge Kingdom does not want to see Sapphire become too powerful. When the first Grand Duke failed in the Battle of Dragon Slaying, no one thought that one day the Grand Duchy of Sapphire could dominate the sea, and even the Steel Ridge Kingdom felt threatened. The Sapphire fleet came and went like the wind, easily attacking the hinterland of the mainland kingdom, robbing and leaving. It was indeed frightening. So the Grand Duke did not find a way to snatch it from the lord who has the legacy of combat aura? The Grand Duke could not easily make a move. If the Grand Duke does not make a move, it is difficult for us to deal with a domain knight with our strength. Maybe after you grow up, you can suppress the domain knight and find a chance to snatch the legacy of combat aura. Nesta stared at List with bright eyes. Anyone with a discerning eye could see the value of the Ghost Blade legacy. Although the general trend of the era was that the knight crushed everything, and all the ancient wizard legacy and ancient warrior legacy were gradually dying out and being swallowed by the knight legacy. The Ghost Blade was also the legacy of a declining civilization, and sooner or later it would disappear in the long river of history. However, in the current situation, the ancient warrior legacy was still a very important combat power. My strength is more derived from the remaining spiritual power of Mentor G.D., not the result of my own training. I am afraid it will take a few years for me to understand the real training system of the Ghost Blade. At that time, if there is a chance, I will personally take action and snatch the legacy of combat aura. List was simple and perfunctory. Half an hour later, the conversation came to an end as they feigned civility with each other. List declined Marquis Nesta's invitation to dinner and left the castle to return to the sunset. Without spending the night in Cowhoof City, the Sunset headed straight for the sea. 4 days later, the Sunset arrived at the port of Black Horse Port, departed on July 20th and returned on August 27th. After more than a month, List, who had returned to the territory again, was warmly welcomed by the officials and civilians of the territory. Consultant Gort's flattery was like a tidal wave, as if it was free of charge. "The glory of the night, my lord." "Stop, don't say such hypocritical words. I'll be very busy this time. So, Advisor Gort, please coordinate with the territory officials and report to me in detail about the development of the territory tomorrow. Right now, I still have a lot of little elves that need to settle down the worm stalks as soon as possible." The 9 little elves at this time were followed by List by a retainer knight holding a jade box. Wheat, sisal hemp, bean green, corn, coptis, apple, turning white grass, pine, tobacco. The 9 little elves had woken up from their slumber. They flew out of the box and circled around List, looking at the new environment with curiosity, boredom, caution or boldness. They had different shapes, different personalities, and their cries were high and low, but all of them were so beautiful and delicate, pleasing to the eye, and they would fall in love at first glance. Seeing so many little elves, the eyes of Gort and others almost fell out. My lord, I have captured several Sky Knights. This is the ransom they paid. Now I will tell you about their species. You have to plan their worm stalks placement on Black Horse Island as soon as possible. Also, this is Yevich Water Peanut, known as the Sword Saint of Clear Water. He is my follower." Yevich immediately stepped forward, bowed slightly, and greeted them in unskilled serpentines. "Yevich greets you." "A sword saint? A strong sword saint? My lord's follower is a strong sword saint? Oh my God!" The territorial officials were all surprised. For them, an ordinary Sky Knight was an unreachable existence, let alone a Sky Knight at the sword saint level. However, List was very dissatisfied with their performance. They made a fuss when they saw a sword saint. If they saw the cool scene of him defeating the domain knight, wouldn't they be scared to the point of cardiac arrest? Of course, List did not blame them, nor did he show off. He didn't need to publicize it. The knight who followed him and returned would take the initiative to publicize his great achievements, so that all the residents of the territory would know how powerful their lord was. As a follower, a sword saint was just a basic operation. He stared at Gort, who had lost his composure. "Yevich also has 2 lesser sprites and 14 sprite worms, which will be planted on Black Horse Island. You have to make overall arrangements. Commander Marcus, you will take Yevich to familiarize him with the environment of Black Horse Island." Gort hurriedly replied, "Yes, sir." Marcus also replied, "Yes, sir." List continued to introduce, "This is Alvin Eaglesword, an Iron Knight and my follower. He will teach the Iron Knight course at the Knight Academy. Advisor Gort, you have to arrange it carefully." "Ah, yes, sir." "These 2 are Viscount Garcia and Viscount Fox, 2 Sky Knights. They are guests from abroad. Arrange accommodation for them in Port Town." There was no need for List to identify himself. He could tell from the look on their faces that they were prisoners. Gort was stunned and did not respond for a while. It wasn't until Marcus approached him and whispered his identity that Gort suddenly realized and stammered back, "Sir, please rest assured, I will arrange it." After that, he swallowed hard. Today's impact on him was too great. Later, he needed to find a tavern, sit for a while, and drink a cup of flower wine to calm down. However, his shock was not over yet. 7 or 8 mages wearing magic cloaks came down from the sunset. One of them was a female mage with a pale face. She looked curiously at the port of Black Horse Island and asked softly, "Sir, is this your territory, Black Horse Island?" The residents here have a happy smile on their faces. Blair, who was also seriously frightened, suddenly had a flash of inspiration and quickly replied, "Sir Mage, all the people on Black Horse Island have such a happy life. It is all thanks to the kindness of the Lord." This flattery was rough. But it was more comfortable than Gort's flattery when they first met. List smiled and said to Bloody Mary, "I hope you will like life here. Mary, take the 3 great mages and follow me to the Magic Academy of the Mage Tower. You will live in the Mage Tower from now on." Chapter 640. Mage Tower. In the Magic Academy, Chris Truth was teaching Ruth and Lucy. The twin little girls were the magic talents mentioned in the Smoke Mission, and List had specially arranged for them to study in the Magic Academy. The 2 did not disappoint List's expectations. In a short period of time, they completed their affinity with magic and stood out among the students. They were valued by Chris and accepted as official magic apprentices. Chris also declared more than once, as long as they grow up, they will become my heirs, continuing my footsteps to explore more truth. At this time, a magic apprentice hurried over. Sir Dean, the Lord has returned and has come to the Magic Academy. Please come over. The Lord has returned? Chris was a little surprised. In previous years, the expansion order had not yet begun at this time, but this year it had ended and returned. But she did not hesitate and motioned for the twins to explore the fireball spell by themselves. She hurried to the Magic Academy on the first floor of the Mage Tower. As soon as she walked down the stairs, she saw a group of people inspecting the situation in the academy. The handsome, tall young man who was surrounded by people was the one who made her feel at ease, warm, and moved her heart, the Viscount of Black Horse Island, List Tulip. Although she had vowed to devote her life to the truth, ordinary people's emotions still manipulated her, and she could not help but be overwhelmed and fascinated by List. Viscount. Dean Chris. A simple greeting did not require too many words. List directly explained his intentions. My expansion order has ended, and I have captured 3 great magicians. They have no money to pay the ransom, so they volunteered to serve me. I intend to arrange for them to work in the Mage Tower at your command. The 3 great magicians shrank their heads into their hoods. It was always a little embarrassing to be captured, not to mention that they would have to listen to the somewhat young female great magician in front of them in the future. It was not discrimination against women, it was discrimination against age. After all, each of the 3 great magicians was over 40, while Chris was only 27 or 28 years old. Chris looked at the 3 great magicians and nodded. I will arrange their work. List turned to the 3 of them and warned, your freedom will definitely be restricted. You will have to submit an application to leave the Mage Tower. You are not allowed to do any research other than what Chris has arranged for you. If you have your own research, you can submit an application. At the same time, you will also have to be responsible for part of the teaching. List had always been worried about the mages, so he planned to use a forceful management system to control the direction of the mages' research and turn them into scholars and researchers. In fact, this was more in line with the temperament of a mage. A mage who was willing to dedicate himself to the truth had a scientist side to him. He believed that sooner or later, these mages would adapt to the future that List had arranged for them by providing them with comfortable personal life services. The Magus Tower had special servants to serve them. Soon, someone arranged the daily lives of the 3 great magicians. On the other side, List was still introducing them to Chris. These 5 are my blood servants. You should have heard of the legendary profession of vampires. They are vampires. Mary can help you manage the Mage Tower. Although they have been converted into vampires for many years, they should not have lost all their knowledge of magic. Your Excellency Chris, it is a pleasure to meet you. We can have a good chat when we have time. Bloody Mary took the initiative to be friendly. Chris nodded. Her attitude was not very warm. She needed time to accept the sudden appearance of these magicians and vampires. Originally, she was the only great magician in the Mage Tower. Everyone relied on her and she could do whatever she wanted. Now, not only were there 3 great magicians, but there were also many vampires. In particular, the leading vampire always made her feel a great threat. She said that she would help manage the Mage Tower, but who knew if she was here to steal the power of the Mage Tower? In fact, List really had the idea of letting Bloody Mary take over some of the power of the Mage Tower. It was not that Bloody Mary's heart was in his hands and she did not dare to betray him, but he thought that Chris was more suitable to be a scholar than a manager. She did not have the scheming methods of the vampires. However, he did not understand Chris. After a moment of helplessness, Chris quickly began her power play. She said in front of List, Lord Viscount, I think the names Bloody Mary and Scarlet Peggy are very unsuitable for the harmonious atmosphere of the Mage Tower. It is not good to call them like this in front of young apprentices. Bloody Mary and the others immediately narrowed their eyes. Proposing to change their names in front of them was undoubtedly a show of strength. List could not help but look at Chris. He had been in a high position for a long time and had some experience in politics. Naturally, he knew that Chris wanted to use the name change to establish authority. He was happy to see this scene. Chris could better balance the power of the Mage Tower with fighting power. What you said is very reasonable. Terms like bloody, blood, and fangs are indeed inappropriate. So, Mary, do you think we should change our names? Bloody Mary said with a smile, As you wish, Lord Viscount. Then change your names. Mages use truth as their surname, and vampires use their family as a collective. You are bats walking in the darkness in the Black Knight family. Here you can see the light. Let's use Dawn Daybreak as our surname. Thank you for giving us a new surname, Lord Viscount. From now on I am Mary Dawn Daybreak. Bloody Mary expressed her joy. She did not necessarily like the surname, Dawn Daybreak. But since it was given by the Lord, the meaning was definitely different. Although Chris used the name change to exert authority, she also used this opportunity to gain new trust. Giving a surname was an act of intimacy and represented trust. As she spoke, she turned and smiled at Chris. Mary Dawn Daybreak greets Lady Chris Truth again. Chris was expressionless. Hello, Mary Dawn Daybreak. The vampires went to make arrangements for their own accommodation. List and Chris walked into her workshop alone. There was already a large pile of finished potions, the fruits of Chris's labor over the past month. List, who had long been cut off from potions, urgently needed this batch of potions to nourish his cells that were about to dry up. Thank you for your hard work, Chris. This is what I should do. After thinking for a while, List said gently, the Mage Tower is named after you. Mary and the others are only staying here temporarily. Their identities are more suitable for reconnaissance on the battlefield. Don't have any other ideas. I need you to manage these mages for me. Lord Viscount, I can understand your arrangements, and I am willing to help you manage the Mage Tower. Chapter 641. This chapter is Minotaur Berserker. The Siren and the Rainbow Whale Lolth were not on Black Horse Island, so List could not rush to Flower Town quickly, nor could he rush to Fairy Island to see the little fire dragon Leo. So he spent the afternoon inspecting his Thorn Castle. After more than a month of construction, the peripheral facilities of Thorn Castle were basically completed, and the main foundation of Thorn Castle was already under construction. Directly in front of the castle was a canal more than 900 meters long. Yevich's sprite worm, a Pennisetum sprite worm, had just been placed on both sides of the river embankment. Pennisetum was not very useful. It could be used as fodder to feed cattle, sheep, rabbits, geese, fish and other animals. The mature stems could be made into some grass products, and it could also be used to stabilize the river embankment. The section of the canal near the castle was used to house the apple sprite that List had just obtained, creating a larger apple paradise in Thorn Castle. In this way, the apple orchard of Flower Town Castle would no longer need to be transplanted. Under the cordyceps tree in Apple Paradise, a round apple table was built and a few chairs were placed. In the future, this would be the place where List and the knight held meetings. His future elite orders of chivalry had been determined to be called the Apple Table Orders of Chivalry. It may not be domineering enough, but it was more meaningful. On the left side of Apple Paradise, a shell corridor was built, paved with various shells produced in the territory. It was purely a decorative building. On the right side was the fish spring and the fish spring corridor built above the fish spring, mainly for future outdoor barbecue parties. In addition, there was a well and a bird's nest in Apple Paradise. The bird's nest was for the Chocobo Loki, List's main mount before riding a dragon. On the right side of the castle, a large ice house had been built. Originally, a flower garden was to be built around the ice house, but now List directly changed the flower garden into a daisy garden. Yevich had a daisy sprite worm which could be used to cultivate the daisy garden. Daisies were ornamental flowers in this world, but List felt that they had the value of making tea. There were no chrysanthemums, so the chrysanthemum tea could only be replaced by daisies. There was also a well on the left side of the castle, and there was also a flytrap garden under construction to house the flytraps he had bought from Viscount Jonas. Behind the castle was a horse farm. There are stables and a well on the right side of the horse farm, which are used to raise the horses of the castle and for noble guests to store their mounts. There is a training field in the middle of the horse farm, which is only used for List's personal training. There are several kennels on the left side of the horse farm, mainly for the blizzard beasts. This was basically the main auxiliary building of the castle. By the end of this year, I should be able to live in this castle, right? List asked Jemiah Rammed Earth, the architect who accompanied him to inspect the construction site. Jormaya replied, Sir Lord, if everything goes smoothly, we will definitely be able to complete the construction before it snows. However, I still need your Blizzard Beast team to cooperate and provide stones and pillars for the construction team. There's no problem with that. In any case, Dosen and the 8 little ones had nothing to do, so they cast spells randomly and condensed a lot of rock thorns. With this group of intermediate World of Warcraft constantly producing rocks every day, there was no shortage of stones in the territory. Sometimes, when List saw more and more stones piled up, he was ready to plan to reclaim the land. He mainly wanted to reclaim the sea around Black Horse Port and build it into a large haven. Black Horse Island was his independent fief. It was also the place where his career started. Maybe one day he would leave Sapphire Kingdom and Black Horse Island, but the construction on the island would not be in vain. First, all the infrastructure could be sold to the new lord at a discount, otherwise he would have the right to destroy it directly. Second, the talents cultivated in the early construction were the cornerstone of the future. Just like this Thorn Castle, the construction will cultivate a group of outstanding construction workers, paving the way for the construction of more buildings in the future. In case one day he had to sell the castle, the new lord couldn't afford the sky-high price of a few dragon coins, so List would rather push it down directly. At night, the dinner was held in Port Town. The town's officials, the new knight, and the mages were all invited to attend. They remembered the heroic sacrifice of the knight and drank the wine of glory. The flowing food and constant laughter made the banquet full of the winter's harvest smile. This time, the harvest of the expansion order is huge, and the warriors who followed me, your contributions are being counted. Gold coins, titles, fiefs, as long as you make contributions they will belong to you. List held a glass of wine and said in a serious tone, the families of the deceased can also receive the rewards and pensions they deserve, I guarantee it in my name. Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord. Waves of praises rang out incessantly. List looked at the excited faces, and the corners of his mouth curled up into an arc, which did not calm down for a long time. What was the purpose of participating in the expansion order so desperately? It's not for today's scene. The increasingly fragrant and sweet flower wine lingered between his lips and teeth, and List was soon drunk. Without using the dragon's do chi to restore his body, he fell asleep with the help of the servants. But even so, early the next morning, List woke up early, and there was no hangover left in his body. Even if he was drunk again, the powerful dragon's do chi would still spontaneously and quickly restore his body to its best state. After washing up, after eating a hearty dinner and filling up the living supplies in the gem space, he took his sprites, including Yevich's sprites. Riding on the flower, he quickly rushed to Flower Town. In the afternoon he finally arrived at the original fief, Flower Town. The town was as prosperous as ever. Isaiah, the administrative officer, greeted him at the port, and even the butler Carter ran to the port to wait. Welcome home, master. Good afternoon, Mr. Carter. After sending away the officials and continuing to work, List returned to the castle accompanied by Carter. The castle was no different from before the expedition. Far away, the telepathic connection made him immediately raise his head and see the thorn fairy, Ella, flying over while crying. It fell on List's head at once. Wow! It spoke of its longing. List took it in his palm and touched the small leaves on its head. He missed it very much. Little guy, have you been naughty during this time? Wow! Ella quickly denied it. But seeing the helpless eyes of the butler Carter, List understood that Ella had caused a lot of trouble during his absence. He didn't pursue anything, but motioned to Ella to meet his new companions. The 9 sprites, who were summoned by his mind, quickly looked at each other. Chirp. Gulp. Ula. Kaka. All kinds of cries came and went, and the atmosphere of these sprites' meeting was obviously not friendly. Ella, who was used to being domineering, was so angry that she put her hands on her hips and yelled at these sprites. Wow, wow, wow. So the sprites fought back. It was noisy in an instant, until List glared at them. Behave yourself. They reluctantly closed their mouths, and the power of the contract could not be violated. Carter secretly wiped his sweat. Master, Ella is going to turn the castle over. You have gained so much glory and got so many sprites. I am afraid the castle's worm room will not be able to live. Turn the other empty rooms into insect rooms as well. The obedient elves will stay in one room, while the disobedient elves will be isolated. Anyway, we'll have to put up with it for now. Once Thorn Castle is completed, there will be brand new insect rooms for every elf to live in. Chapter 642. Whoa! Ella, who had been locked in a box, issued an unwilling protest. In the end, she could not resist List's discipline, and obediently lay down and slept. List took the time to ride the chocobo Loki to the seaside castle. Achi was not in the castle, nor was the 7-colored whale Lolth. Only the giant algae sprite Parker, along with 3 giant algae sprites and 8 giant algae sprite worms, were swimming freely in the pool. Upon seeing List, Parker immediately opened his mouth full of sharp teeth and laughed heartily. Wow, List, you're back. Achi said that you were at war. Did you win? Parker has never lost a battle at sea. Do you want me to teach you? Thanks, Parker. List reached out and shook hands with Parker, but I have never lost a battle on land. Haha, worthy of being as handsome as Parker. List. We are both experts at war. That's right. Casually echoing Parker's words, List asked, what about a Chi? She and that stupid, ugly, big colorful fish went out to look for worms. What a bummer. What's so good about those little worms? Parker hates little worms the most. If a little worm dares to come to Parker's territory, Parker will tear it in two. Don't be like that, Parker. You also evolved from a sprite worm. Haha, but I have evolved successfully and have already broken away from vulgar interests. On the other hand, they are still stupid and ugly little worms. What Parker said made sense. For a moment, List did not know how to refute. He did not know how the giant algae sprite grew up to have such an unkind, arrogant, and narcissistic character. He felt that he should have less contact with Parker in the future, so as not to let Parker affect his character. The sprite contract was very wonderful. It was a two-way contract. It seemed to rely on spiritual power to determine the dominant party. When sprites were weak, the dominant party of the contract was a human. For example, sprite worms could not disobey their master's orders, while sprites could not disobey orders. When the elves became stronger, the leader of the contract would also change. List would find it difficult to directly command Great Elf Parker. If it was a dragon elf that was stronger than a great elf, perhaps the elf contract would be a completely equal contract. So much so that List guessed that if there was an elven king, would the elven king rely on the elven contract to take over the position of the leader and become the master of the humans? Of course, he hadn't even seen a dragon elf before, so he couldn't be sure of the elf king's situation. He didn't continue to talk nonsense with Parker. He directly asked, Parker, do you know when a Chi will be back? Handsome Parker doesn't know. Alright, you can continue playing. I'm leaving. Don't go, let's chat a little longer. At night, in the Flower Town's nameless castle, there was another grand banquet to celebrate List's triumphant return. Lines like the knight's glorious blessing would be performed from time to time. Meanwhile, the Coral Island, Tulip Castle. A retainer knight of Lee William was reporting to Levis. Madame Marie, Ralia, and Lytton were listening on the sidelines. This is what happened in the development order. After Sir List was stationed at the trapped Dragon Mountain iron mine for 5 days, he returned by ship in order to avoid the retaliation of the Dragon Knight. He returned to the Flower Town this afternoon. After listening to all the details of the development order, Madame Marie couldn't help but exclaim in surprise, "Ah!" The retainer knight didn't know how to tell a story. His description of the ups and downs of the war was dry, but the soul-stirring scene still made everyone present feel the same. Levis shook his head, an expression of disbelief on his face. Domain Knight? A Domain Knight that is more powerful than a Perfection Sky Knight? List actually defeated a Domain Knight by himself. He even seized a mine with 1,000,000 tons of iron ore? As he spoke, he seemed to have thought of something and became excited in an instant. A mine with 1,000,000 tons of iron ore. When you returned, you had already transported 500,000 tons of iron ore. That's right, Sir Levis. Lytton asked in a shrill voice. Marquis Wildtao, who controlled the chi of the entire orders of chivalry, was still unable to defeat Big Brother List? He also captured several Sky Knights, one of whom was a sacred swordsman and became his follower? Indeed. There was a moment of silence, followed by the sound of inhaling cold air. Madame Marie recovered from her shock. She clenched her fists and asked, Therefore, the Tulip family has made great contributions in the development order? When I followed Sir, I heard from Sir's conversation with Sir List that Sir's contributions have reached the standard for promotion to a Marquis. If the subsequent 500,000 tons of iron ore can also be transported back smoothly, then Sir's promotion to a Marquis will be greatly accelerated. Even Sir's promotion will come after the development order ends. Praise Sir List, praise Sir Father. Rolia reverently clasped her hands in front of her chest. May the glory of the night always look after the Tulip family. Immediately after, Rolia asked, Did Sir Father say when he will return from the Eagle Kingdom? Also, did my father say when he will return? With the iron ore transportation completed, the development order is basically over. Sir Marquis Roderick and Sir Messiro should return together. Levis was so excited that he couldn't sit still. He paced back and forth in the living room, constantly asking about the details of the battlefield, and then sent someone to inform Madame Penelope and Elvira. When the old Madame and Elvira arrived at Tulip Castle, they were once again surprised and full of praise. Madame Penelope said on the spot, Tomorrow we will go to the Flower Town together. Since the most outstanding bloodline of our tulip family has returned from the battlefield, we should celebrate the joy of the harvest for him. The commotion lasted for more than an hour. Only then did Tulip Castle regain its peace. After washing up, Levis and Rolia returned to their room and went straight to the baby's bed taken care of by a servant. Looking at the sleeping baby, the couple showed loving expressions of parents. Levis reached out and touched the baby's tender face, saying, "Tomorrow, go to the flower town and take Richard with you. Let List see his nephew. He is now a top powerhouse under the Dragon Knight rank. This time all the resources of the development order belong to him. The harvest will certainly be huge." Just half a month ago, Rolia, who had been pregnant for 10 months, gave birth to a healthy baby boy, becoming the eldest son of the 4th generation of the Tulip family. According to the name given by the Count before leaving, he was named Richard Tulip. Rolia was a little worried. Is Richard too small? The road will be bumpy. Don't be nervous. Let the servants keep a close eye on him. Put more quilts in the carriage. List is his uncle. Such a powerful uncle cannot be neglected. The Tulip family will have to rely on List's help to promote to a marquis on the Iron Hoof Island. Perhaps it was the intuition brought about by strength, or perhaps it was the change of perspective after becoming a parent, but Levis had thoroughly recognized List's strength. Rolia agreed, "You are right. List is a strong support for the family. We need to maintain a close relationship with him." After saying that, she lowered her head. Chapter 643. List did not know that he already had a nephew. He knew that Loria Golden Ears of Wheat was due, but he did not notice that the due date had already passed. After the banquet, he once again went to the seaside villa and finally saw Achi. Big brother? Achi had already learned from Parker that List had returned. She was not surprised but rather very happy. However, she was not the kind of girl who would act coquettishly, so her smile was very reserved. Ever since she had immersed herself in the world of magic and truth, she had become a lot quieter. The knowledge that was as vast as the ocean always made her forget to return. Perhaps the turmoil of this world was extraordinarily lively in the eyes of ordinary people, but in her eyes, it was only superficial and superficial. Except for List. She would often think of List's smile. Big brother looks really good when he smiles. At this moment, List just opened his arms, and Achi threw herself into his embrace. She immediately smelled the strong scent of alcohol, but also the familiar scent that made her feel at ease. "Achi, how have you been for the past month?" "They're all good. It's just that the magic plants are growing very slowly. Druid magic can't make them grow fast, and there's no progress in the transformation spell. Leo's temper has also become worse. He doesn't like the fish that Achi catches for him. He wants to eat beef, but Achi can't get him any beef." "It's fine, I'll deal with Leo." List curled up a strand of Achi's beautiful azure hair and sniffed it. There was a faint fragrance. "I heard from Parker that you and Lolth have been looking for sprite worms recently?" "Yes, Achi recently made some new discoveries in her research of magic. She wants to carefully understand the birth of sprites, but after searching many seas, she still couldn't find any gestating sprite worms." "Oh, that's right, big brother. Achi found a new sprite worm on the way to the Dodo Island a week ago." "Really? Have you contracted it?" "No, Achi is waiting for big brother to contract it. Just in time to go to the Dodo Island tomorrow and contract this sprite worm in passing." After chatting with Achi for a while, List took out 2 magic books and handed them to her. "This one, The Nature and Development of Blood Magic, was written by my new vampire follower, and this one, The Summary of Great Sorcerers, was jointly written by 3 great sorcerers. Take it for your reference." "Ah, vampires? You'll understand after reading this book." List did not explain much as everything was contained in the blood magic book. He took out a beautiful amber and said, "Aren't you studying the birth of sprites? You can have this sprite worm amber. You can slowly study it." The sprite worm amber was dug out from the flower town's rocky beach. Apart from being a bit of inspiration for Chris Truth's promotion to a great wizard, it did not have any other use. Therefore he gave it to Achi to study and see if she could find any new discoveries. After Achi accepted the sprite worm amber, List handed her a hand-drawn map of the ruins. This map is a new map drawn by 3 great sorcerers based on a broken map. It seems to point to an unknown race living in the sea. The civilization of this race has already declined, leaving only some ruins. A race of the sea? I suspect that it might be a race of sirens. But Achi is also a siren. However, Achi is a spirit of the sea. She has been living in a shell since she was born, living alone in the sea. Although she has sensed the existence of other sirens several times, Chi doesn't seem to want to communicate with them. Sirens shouldn't have a civilization, right? What you said makes sense, but I can't think of any other intelligent race living in the sea. List shook his head. It was mentioned in the night novels and magic books that he had read. The intelligent creatures that existed in the sea besides sirens were mermaids. Sometimes he wondered if sirens and mermaids were actually the same kind of creature, but were mistaken for two different creatures. After all, when humans saw sirens or mermaids in the sea, they should not be able to distinguish the details. However, these speculations were not important. List smiled. The three great wizards have already determined the basic area of the relic. When we have time to explore it together, we will know what this unknown race is and what good things it left behind. Yeah. Then you should rest early. Big brother, are you going back? Yeah, I'm going back. List stood up, looked at the petite Chi again and could not help but sigh with emotion. I really want Chi to grow up faster. A blush seemed to flash across Chi's face, but it was fleeting. She also sighed with emotion in a soft voice. Chi also wants to grow up faster. Early the next morning, List directly took Chi to the Dodo Island. Along the way they found a sprite worm. It was a familiar sprite worm, a seaweed sprite worm. Chi had also contracted a seaweed sprite worm before. However, the territory lacked manpower. Just planting and harvesting giant algae took up a large number of fishermen. They didn't even breed kelp, let alone seaweed. It could only be put aside for the time being. When a new batch of serfs arrived, a large number of fishermen would be trained to carry out breeding operations along the coastline. Coastline breeding and shallow water fishing were projects that the territory vigorously developed. Eventually, it would transition to offshore breeding and distant fishing, fully exploiting the value of the sea. But why do I no longer feel excited about contracting a sprite worm? Riding the 7-colored whale Lolth on the seabed, List was aware of his tranquility. From hearing about sprite worms to contracting a sprite worm, he had never felt excited. It seemed that ever since he seized the 9 lesser sprites from the expansion order, the discovery of wild sprite worms was no longer an important matter. A wave of plunder and war was equivalent to several years of income from farming in the territory. It would indeed have a great impact. Every year, the Grand Duchy of Sapphire's expansion order attracts a large number of knight participants. Sure enough, there is a reason for it. Even he, who was blessed by the power of fate and could pick up sprite worms at any time, had a great desire for plunder and war, let alone the barren knight. Plundering a knight could eat for several years at a time. Why not go and plunder? Just in case the knight glory favored him, he might become an aristocrat. To put it bluntly, I am used to eating big fish and meat, so I have no interest in small vegetables. It was already afternoon by the time they arrived at the Dodo Island. Chi basically fed once every 5 days, waiting on the shore at a fixed time. Now was not the time to eat. However, List didn't care. He climbed the crater and shouted at the sulfur-smelling crater, "Leo, get up and eat beef." After a few greetings, the tumbling magma in the crater suddenly exploded. Flames rose into the air and condensed into a fire dragon with red and black scales. It was the little fire dragon Leo. Leo circled in the sky before swooping down and landing in front of List. Its body was clearly bigger than before. When it landed, it squinted at List and breathed out hot flames from its nostrils. Its demeanor and expression gave List the feeling that it was looking down on him. List's complexion sank and he responded in a calm tone, "What's wrong, Leo? Don't you recognize me? Or do you not want to eat beef?" The word beef made Leo stare blankly. Chapter 644. This chapter is I Love Your Highness, and will be updated. There was beef. Although Leo was reluctant, he still cooperated with List and practiced to his heart's content. He had only taken some potions for more than a month on the expedition, so his strength increased very slowly. But it could not be said to be slow. Compared to other Sky Knights, he still seemed to practice very fast. But compared to when he practiced with a dragon, he could feel a substantial increase in strength. The growth of his strength alone was too little. It's still refreshing to practice as a dragon knight. But he also had certain concerns, mainly that the improvement of Leo's relationship seemed to have stagnated, and there was a lot of regression. As a prospective dragon knight, he had not yet succeeded in riding a dragon, and he did not have the time to spend every day with Leo and brainwash him to get rid of Leo's alienation. As a result, there was always a deep gap between the man and the dragon. Looking at Leo's exhausted look, he took out a pile of potions and handed them to Leo, and at the same time, touched Leo's hands all over. Leo did not resist his touch, but it did not seem to enjoy it. The good impression that he had accumulated some time ago had fallen back to its original point. A dragon that was difficult to serve. No wonder elemental dragons are mostly evil dragons. This kind of character is really annoying. List played with one of Leo's scales. The scales on its neck, head, forelimbs, and wings were thin and dense, and the scales on its back were thick and large. The largest was even the size of a wash basin. The scales were warm to the touch, and magic could be seen escaping between the gaps, faintly transforming into tiny red sparks. The magic sparks were not hot. They were between magic and matter and not real sparks. Sometimes he wanted to tear off a scale and bring it back to study slowly, but he did not do so. Feeling the magic attached to the scales and the abundant dragon wool inside, List frowned and thought, how did other dragon knights succeed in riding a dragon? Could it be that elemental dragons are so bad that they can't be ridden? The dragons of the major kingdoms are basically elemental dragons and metal dragons. It seems that only 1 or 2 are elemental dragons and there are no fire dragons among them. He paused. He thought again, or is it because I'm not strong enough? I need to have perfect combat energy to get Leo's approval, ride it and form a contract with it? I should write to Marquis Merlin and ask him what the perfect high-level combat energy is like. Is it similar to the elite Earth Knight's mid-level combat energy? The beginner combat energy of an apprentice knight was very simple. It was to simply extract a special magical power from one's body and call it combat energy. When the Do-Chi sublimated and gained its own attribute, it would advance to the intermediate Do-Chi and become an Earth Knight. When the intermediate Do-Chi reaches a saturated state in the body, one will become an elite Earth Knight. If he wanted to continue training at this time, he would have to rely on the impact of the magic potion to break the shackles of his own cells, thereby allowing him to accommodate more mid-level battle energy. A quantitative change would lead to a qualitative change, ultimately leading to a high-level Do-Chi. The Sky Knight's advanced combat aura was even more unique than the intermediate combat aura. The biggest change was in its lightness. Leaping in the air was easy. When the advanced combat aura reached a saturated state, one would become a perfect Sky Knight. List wasn't very clear about the state of the advanced combat aura at this time. According to the common records, a perfect Sky Knight could start looking for a dragon rider. Perhaps the advanced combat aura at this stage would be of some help in riding a dragon. Or maybe the perfect combat aura could only continue training with the help of a dragon. He guessed that it was the second possibility. He could only rely on a dragon to break through the shackles of the advanced combat aura. Roar. After Leo swallowed the potion, he let out an even more majestic roar. He glanced at List and without too much reluctance, he directly leaped towards the crater of the volcano and fell into the magma like a meteor. The magma roiled and returned to normal, leaving only steam and the smell of sulfur. The sun was setting in the west. Li Si stood quietly at the crater of the volcano. No one knew what he was thinking. After a long time he slowly walked down the mountain. Achi was helping the rainbow whale, Lolth, wash the dead skin off her body. Seeing that List had returned, Achi immediately put down her brush and smiled at List peacefully. Lolth also let out a cheerful chirp. She felt a sense of loss from Leo. It was quickly washed away by this heartwarming scene. Compared to little fire dragon Leo, Achi was much more considerate. An evil dragon is an evil dragon. It seems that if I don't use some forceful methods, it will be very difficult for Leo to yield. But how should I be forceful? It seems that with my current strength I might not be able to defeat it. Even a young dragon had great strength. Just the move of transforming into magic power would be very difficult to truly harm it. Moreover, relying on the environment of the crater, Leo was almost invincible here. Unless, if I take out the volcanic glass and make a weapon, I wonder if it can attack Leo's magic power form? In fact, it should not be called magic power form but dragon wool form. Dragon wool was the extreme nature of dragon magic. List had created the name by referring to sword intent. There was no point in thinking too much. He smiled and joined the ranks of helping Lolth brush the dead skin. At night, after resting in the wooden house on the Dodo Island for the night, List got up early in the morning and picked a batch of hemp rope vine seeds and skull fruits. He then left and returned to the flower town. As soon as he arrived at the seaside villa, he saw a retainer knight wandering in the distance. When he saw List, he quickly rushed over. "Sir, you have finally returned. The old lady and Madame Marie of Tulip Castle, as well as Sir Levis and his wife as well as Baron Olvera, are waiting for you in the castle." "Grandmother, why are they here?" "They have come to celebrate your victory, sir." Sir Levis and his wife have also brought your nephew. My nephew? List finally reacted. Luolia has given birth. It's a boy? What is his name? A boy, his name is Richard. Richard, ha! List put the seaweed worm into the pool of the worm house, mounted a chocobo and quickly returned to the castle. When he returned, everyone, including Madame Penelope, came out to greet him, just like every time he returned in triumph. Although the atmosphere was simple, but it was more enthusiastic than ever. Every time he returned in triumph, the enthusiasm he received would skyrocket by a large margin. This was the snobbery aristocrats learned at birth, but Liszt did not reprimand this behavior. It was the nature of most people to despise the poor and love the rich. The strong were worshipped while the weak were despised. Even he himself was willing to look at pretty ladies more than ordinary women. Grandmother, why did you come to the flower town in person? Since the genius of our tulip family has returned in triumph, how could I, an old woman who relies on the family for a living, not come to greet my genius grandson? Madame Penelope said calmly. Liszt supported her arm. I was delayed by some matters. Originally, I planned to go to Tulip Castle in person to present you with the news of victory. It is enough that you have this intention. Chapter 645. The baby looked cute. Of course, Liszt knew that as an uncle he needed to give a greeting gift, but he wasn't prepared at all. Although he had risen in power in recent years, his family wasn't rich. Giving an elf as a gift was even more inappropriate. Nobles didn't have the custom of giving elves to each other. Maybe I should give him a few books, my self-published personal works? He rejected the idea as soon as it appeared. If it was an adult, books would be fine, but giving a baby books would seem a bit perfunctory. After thinking for a while, he took out a sapphire and stuffed it into the hands of the sleeping Richard. Looking at Richard, he was actually speaking to Levis and his wife. This sapphire is the gem embedded in my sword Sky Splitter. In the battle with Marquis Wildwave, the Sky Splitter was badly damaged and can no longer be used, but this sapphire is still intact. Richard, I give it to you. I hope you can become a powerful knight like me. This was a good wish. The significance of the gem was great. Nowadays, Liszt was the benchmark for knight, enough to become Richard's life goal. This was not boasting but a fact. Levis and Rolia were obviously very satisfied with Liszt's gift. Liszt, thank you for your blessing for Richard. We also hope that one day he can become a powerful knight like you. If it was an ordinary person's blessing, it should be for Richard to one day be able to ride a dragon, but it was more like a courtesy. The goal of riding a dragon was too inconceivable. Becoming a top powerhouse like Liszt should be the lifelong pursuit of all knight. Of course, Levis and his wife still didn't know that Liszt was actually a ghost blade. The news of the inheritance of the ancient warriors was only spread among a few great nobles. There was no need to tell too many people about it. In the era of knight rule, the ancient warriors were doomed to decline. Even if they could still be passed down, the families that held the inheritance of the ancient warriors would keep the secret. After giving the greeting gifts, Liszt also received a gift. Unsurprisingly, it was a potted plant brought by Madame Penelope. Using magic eyes to observe, the potted plant didn't have the slightest sign of magic, which made him feel relieved and a little disappointed. His appetite had long been spoiled by the sprite worm bred in the potted plant. Basically, it was Liszt telling stories for the entire afternoon. He had conquered the Snow Pear Castle, which was guarded by the great sorcerer. He had seized the Little River Heart Castle, which was guarded by the Four Bridges. He had resisted Marquis Wildwave, who possessed the Battle Aura domain. He had taken down the White Deer Castle at lightning speed. He had opened up the Golden Waterway between the Roaring River and the Three Dragons River. Finally, he had taken down the iron mine at the Trap Dragon Mountain. Countless ships went upstream and downstream, loading the heavy iron ores and transporting them away. Compared to the stuttering narration of the messenger knight, Liszt, as the main character of the story, narrated it personally. It was a different kind of feeling and it was intoxicating. Especially the battle with Marquis Wildwave, which could be said to be second only to the dragon-slaying battle. For the Grand Duchy of Sapphire, it might not even happen once in a few decades. To be precise, it had never happened before. Without the inheritance of the ancient warriors, without the secret books of combat aura, they could only randomly grab some resources. Before the banquet, Liszt took his family to see his elf again. Today he had a greater sprite, the giant algae greater sprite. 14 lesser sprites, thorns, corn, 3 giant algae, wheat, sisal, pea green, corn, coptis, apple, turning white grass, pine and tobacco lesser sprite. A cheese lesser sprite, the mangrove lesser sprite. Anyevich's lesser sprites, the 2 water peanut lesser sprites. 43 sprite worms, peanuts, alfalfa, 2 thorns, 2 tulip, corn, 2 wheat, tomato, sweet coconut, 2 black nightshade, corn grass, 3 rubber for snake blood fruits, apple, barley, fig, blackberry, pea, smoke grass, green tea tree, Venus flytrap, autumn eggplant, lamb's horn, green ingot, human skull, stone flower, 8 giant algae and seaweed sprite worm. A cheese sprite worms, kelp, seaweed, redstone flower, ponytail and inkhorn sprite worm. Anyevich's sprite worms, 100 clams erecta, sweet potato, celery, stipa, ryegrass, daisy, cat's tail, pennisetum, scattered sunflower, forsythia, 2 broom sprouts, stone lotus root and green radish sprite worm. The total was 1 greater sprite, 17 lesser sprites and 62 sprite worms. Such a number had already surpassed that of the tulip family in terms of lesser sprites. The greater sprites were equal, while the number of sprite worms was only half. I simply can't believe that your property is already richer than that of an ordinary count's family. Although the family has more sprite worms but you have more lesser sprites. Levis sighed with emotion. The tulip family sprites had all been contracted to him, but those given by his father and those earned by himself were 2 completely different feelings of accomplishment. He. Liszt said in a reserved manner, after all, I am a child of glory, and the sprites favor me more. Moreover, if a few more expansion orders are issued, I am afraid that the castle's worm rooms will not be able to accommodate these beautiful sprites. Levis wanted to refute, how could sprites be so easy to obtain? But when the words reached his mouth, he swallowed them back down. For others, sprites were truly rare, but for Liszt, it seemed to be the opposite. This could be seen from Madame Penelope's potted plants alone. He and Lavera had brought back many potted plants, yet none of them had ever bred sprite worms. Therefore he could only force a smile. I believe that such a day will come. The banquet was lively and festive. After arranging the accommodations of his grandmother and the others, Liszt took a bath and lay back on his bed. His spirits from being flattered had yet to completely subside. He recalled the 2.5 years he had spent after transmigrating. Although he had not made any earth-shattering changes, he had also not been unknown and invisible. At least in the Grand Duchy of Sapphire, which was a corner of the continent, he had repeatedly been in the limelight and had become a household name. After the iron mine robbery campaign was over, his name was bound to sweep through the various islands of the kingdom, and everyone from aristocrats to commoners would talk about his name. Perhaps all the young knight would also regard him as their goal, whether it be out of jealousy or worship. I really want to quickly succeed in riding a dragon. My handsomeness no longer allows me to be so low-key. He thought somewhat absent-mindedly. In this world, a knight who was not a dragon was, after all, an ant. Only by becoming a dragon knight would he be qualified to do as he pleased. Slowly, an illusory smoke rose before his eyes. Whenever he was absent-minded or focused, the smoke mission would naturally appear. His attention quickly returned, fixing on the changes in the smoke mission. Mission completed. Reward, 3 enchanting dragon spirit fruits. The mission has been completed, which means that the Grand Duchy of Sapphire's expansion order has officially ended. Either Dragon Knight Alonso Cypher has rushed back, or the iron mine has been emptied. But what is this reward, 3 enchanting dragon spirit fruits that I have never heard of? Could it be? Chapter 646. Liszt was not a person with long-term plans and always liked to come up with new ideas. But it was undeniable that he was highly dedicated to dragon riding. He had detailed records of any information related to dragons, and listed them in his unpublished Liszt Dragon Taming Handbook. And when he gave the magic books to Chris and Ichi to read, he also asked them to record any information related to dragons and give it to him to organize into the handbook. He also often organized servants who could read to flip through night novels to find information about dragons, training, geography, World of Warcraft, elves and other relevant information, and then recorded it in detail. Just the books that recorded information could fill an entire bookshelf. Of course, because they were made of thick bast paper, there was not much real content. The white paper workshop had been researching white paper, and there was already a finished product, but the finished product was not even as good as the toilet paper used in rural graves, let alone writing on it. There was still a long way to go for the research and improvement of white paper, so thick bast paper was the main focus for the time being. According to all the information about dragons that he had read in night novels and magic books that he could buy, there was no mention of something like the dragon's soul fruit. In other words, this fruit was either monopolized by the dragon-raising families, or it was rare and unknown. So, where do I go to find these 3 dragon soul fruits? There doesn't seem to be much of a way to search other than launching a census of the land. Maybe I don't actually need to do anything, and the 3 dragon soul fruits will automatically come to me? No matter what. He was now very excited. Excited by the bold idea that came to him after hearing about the dragon soul fruit, all his sleepiness and exhaustion were swept away, leaving only his blood boiling. Sure enough, as long as my mental interference is strong enough, I can guide the smoke mission, or rather, pull the threads of fate. Every day I think about how to ride a dragon, the smoke mission will automatically change my fate, and guide me to the dragon's soul fruit, a magical fruit that can charm dragons. After a moment of excitement, he forcibly suppressed his thoughts. He had to consider that the dragon's soul fruit was not the effect he had imagined, so it was not too late to get excited after getting the fruit. At this time, he called out the smoke mission again. Mission, the hand-drawn map of the ruins is not accurate. You will need to search carefully to find the lost civilization of an unknown race. Perhaps it is wandering in a corner of this sea, and the song that rings out will guide you. Please look for the song at sea. Reward, aged siren. An old siren? It was another surprise. Sirens were magical creatures. Ever since Liszt was obsessed with Ichi, he knew how wonderful they were. It was just a pity that this was an old sea monster. The word old always made people think of white-haired, wrinkled, and hunched figures, which greatly conflicted with the pure, beautiful, and innocent image of sirens that Ichi gave to Liszt. However, aging, sickness, and death were common occurrences in life, and he was not sad about it. Searching for an unknown race and encountering a sea demon. Does this mean that this unknown race is most likely left behind by the sea demons? He suppressed his previous excitement and began to seriously consider the new mission. The old siren should be more than 400 years old. 400 years of life should be full of vicissitudes of life, and it should be very knowledgeable. At this point, Zhang Xian's eyes lit up. This old siren is simply a living handbook of the sea given to me by the smoke mission. As the saying goes, having an old person at home is like having a treasure. Wisdom was more the accumulation of experience. In the more than 400 years of life, this old siren had been to many places, touched many ships, and witnessed many stories. It was conceivable that she herself was a thick book of knowledge. The next day, after sending off Madame Penelope and the others, he began to plan to find the ruins of civilization. This required Ichi's help. Ichi, you can sense the existence of the siren within a certain range, right? Yes, brother. Although Ichi has never seen a siren of the same kind, Ichi has felt the breath of the siren several times and knows that they are not far away. How far is the sensing range? I'm not very clear, but it should be more than a dozen kilometers. Well, Ichi, prepare carefully. I'm going to explore the ruins map. Maybe we will encounter other sirens. This requires you to determine their existence and contact them. At the urging of Liszt, Ichi did not prepare too much. She quickly packed up her personal belongings and told Nami to take good care of the ducklings on Mangrove Island. Liszt also took the time to write a letter and gave it to Butler Carter for safekeeping. If the Count and the others did not return by the time they returned, he would give the letter to the Count. The content of the letter was not much. It was mainly to entrust the Count with the resources exchanged for iron or to buy serfs and food. If the Grand Duke sent someone to ask if he was willing to follow him directly, the Count must refuse. For the time being, he had not considered following the Grand Duke directly. At the same time, Liszt also told the territorial officials to carry out an agricultural census. Once new varieties of fruit were found, they must be kept and strictly prohibited from being destroyed at will. Everything would be arranged when he returned. So, in the morning, after exchanging the resources in the gem space, Liszt and Ichi rowed the 7-colored whale Lolth to the sea. Ichi knew nautical charts so she could travel freely in the sea. From Coral Island to the roaring estuary, it would take about 10 days by boat, but for the 7-colored whale riding at 80 kilometers per hour, including rest time, it would only take 2.5 days to complete the journey. They traveled during the day, took out the sampan at night, used the water, wind, and temperature beads and rested quietly. In the blink of an eye, they had sailed into the depths of the vast sea. Occasionally, when Lolth was resting, Liszt would stand on her back and jump up, fly high into the sky, and then take out binoculars to look around. About 900 kilometers from the shore of the roaring estuary, he found a small island in the sea and immediately guided Ichi and Lolth to swim to the island. It was not comfortable to always soak in the sea, but he hoped to restore the feeling of being grounded on the island. The island was very small, smaller than Mangrove Island, Stony Island, Sandy Beach Island, and Seagull Island, a small island of less than 100 acres. It was a lonely reef island, surrounded by rocky cliffs, and only a small forest on the top. After approaching, List leaped directly into the air and landed in the grove on the top of the island. As far as the eye could see, it was the same kind of tree which was relatively short, had very interesting leaves and looked a bit like ferns. It was the kind of tall trees in the dinosaur era. Most of the ferns on Earth had become short plants, leaving only a few trees like the cyathea. I wonder if there are any elves being bred? Every time he arrived at a green environment, he habitually used magic eyes to look for elves. It was just a routine sweep. But suddenly, 3 bright magic feedback points appeared in his field of vision. His heart moved and he ran directly in the direction of the 3 feedback points. In less than a minute, he arrived in front of the feedback point. There was a circle of open space in the fern forest, and in the center of the open space was a small dead shrub. The small shrub had no leaves, and there were 3 shining colorful fruits hanging on the remaining branches. Dragon Soul Fruit. Chapter 647. According to the inherent impression, List always thought that the 3 soul fruits should be found in the territory, or at least around List. He didn't expect it to be on an isolated island in the vast sea. The dead tree was less than 1 meter high, and on the dead branches hung 3 fist-sized colorful fruits, a bit like apples but rounder. There was no smell and no loss of magic. If he closed his eyes, no matter how List perceived the magic in the surrounding air, he would not be able to perceive the existence of the 3 soul fruits. Only when List used magic eyes could he feel the amazing magic power under the colorful luster. The light of the mana retroaction was a rich chaotic color. The chaotic color was the color of a gray haze, but it was a little more special. Looking at it carefully, it was gray, and then looking at it carefully, it seemed transparent and illusory, but from a different perspective, it could become a substantial smoke. Neither black nor white, illusory and real like fog and haze. List was not in a hurry to pick the fruit. Instead, he carefully observed the fruit in the dead wood. The density of the magic is almost saturated. It's far more powerful than any other fruit with magic, including the bloodline fruit. Such a powerful magic is indeed possible for the mystic dragon. It was confirmed that the dead tree was indeed dead, and there was no sign of recovery. However, he was reluctant to let it go. He directly took out a bone shovel from the gem space and began to carefully dig the roots of the dead wood. He was ready to put the 3 fruits together with the dead wood into his gem space. Such a precious item must be treated with caution. This digging took more than an hour. Finally, without hurting the roots of the dead tree, the whole soil was dug up, and then he wrapped it in chi and stuffed it into the gem space that had been vacated. After entering the space, the 3 mystic dragon soul fruits were still shining brightly. List breathed a long sigh of relief. Phew, it's done. The next time I go to the Dodo Island to practice, I will feed the little fire dragon Leo to eat one and see the effect. If Leo is drugged, I will ride directly on the Dragon Tooth platform and sign the contract first. He spent so much to resurrect Leo, took care of him carefully for a long time, found a volcano for him to practice, and delivered food for him. He served him like a parent, but he was not even willing to ride him. Facing such an evil dragon, List's heart was filled with resentment, so he didn't feel any psychological burden when he used such a dishonorable and forceful method. I'm not going to kill it, I'm just going to ride it. He looked at the huge crater left behind. List clapped his hands and patrolled the fern forest on the top of the island again. His magic eyes scanned back and forth twice, but he did not find any magical plants. He didn't see any plants of the same height and shape as the dead wood with his naked eye, so he was sure that there was no more value in this place. I can't say that it's worthless. What if there's a sapling that bears the enchanting dragon soul fruit here? Let's call this island the Soul Island. It's not only a place to stay on the sea, but it's also a place where new enchanting dragon soul fruit can be nurtured. We'll have to keep an eye on this island in the future. The island was named the Soul Island, and the tree was named the Soul Fruit Tree. After that, List jumped into the sea and left the Heart Island, continuing to sail towards the coastal waters of the roaring estuary. The weather in September gradually turned cold. In the blink of an eye, List, Achi and Rose had wandered the nearby seas for 2 days, but they did not find the ruins that were marked on the map. They also did not notice the existence of the old siren. They didn't even find a deserted island. Instead, they encountered a few sea monsters, which were easily hunted by Achi and then left for List to barbecue at sea. There were charcoal, hot pot, and other cooking utensils in the gem space, so they could barbecue to their heart's content on the sea. Not only List loved to eat barbecue but Rose also loved it very much. This kind of life was actually not bad, so he didn't feel anxious. Especially when he was full, listening to Achi's sweet and melodious singing was definitely the highest level of enjoyment. It's a pity that there's no piano in the scene. List felt regretful again. Occasionally playing the piano could cultivate one's mind and calm one's restless emotions. But just as he was indulging in fantasies, Achi's singing stopped abruptly and she said in surprise, "Ah, brother, Achi feels the aura of the same kind. There's a siren nearby." List immediately got up from the cabin of the sampan. "Really? Can you determine the location of this siren?" "It's a little difficult, the feeling is not very clear, it's faintly discernible." Achi frowned, trying to sense her own kind. "Remember this position. Let's swim north now and see if the feeling is clearer." After a while Achi, who stopped swimming, shook her head. "Brother, the feeling is gone. It seems that this siren is not in the north, let's go back." After returning, the feeling reappeared. This time List directed them to the south, but the feeling was interrupted again when they reached the south. Then they returned to the starting point and set off west, swimming for a full 10 kilometers. This time the feeling was not only not interrupted but also became clearer. "This is the direction, let's go." While swimming, List rose into the air from time to time and observed the surroundings with binoculars. After such a long time of exploration, it was basically certain that the siren had not moved, and the possibility that she was still should be between a reef. He found suspicious islands and reefs, which were likely to be the hiding place of the siren. He kept exploring. Relying on the connection between Achi and the siren, before dark, he finally found a coral reef that emerged due to the ebb tide. This was a seabed coral reef that did not surface, but the outline of a white coral reef ring island could be seen, hidden at a depth of 1 or 2 meters underwater. Similar to the ringed reef in Flower Town, this coral island was also ring-shaped. In the center of the ring of the coral reef was a shallow small lake, which was completely surrounded by tall corals. Around this large coral reef, there were several small coral reefs, none of which surfaced. They were almost invisible at high tide, and their outlines could be vaguely seen at low tide. "It's here, Achi, let's look for it." List didn't stop, casting magic eyes back and forth between the coral reefs. After searching for a long time, the moon had risen, but he still couldn't find the siren's hiding place. In desperation, he had to let Achi try to summon the siren by singing. Achi's ethereal, pure, and melodious singing sounded between the coral reefs. After a while, suddenly from a small coral island in the distance, there was an ethereal, sad, and delicate song, echoing Achi's song. This song was equally beautiful, but compared to the simplicity and innocence contained in Achi's voice, its voice was more mature and rich, and one could feel that there were many stories contained in it. Chapter 648. Between the Reefs. A huge conch shell shone with magic light, and a woman with a light green, seemingly transparent, but actually opaque water band covering her important parts sat on it. Her body also shone with a strong magic light. Water element magic light. "Are you looking for us?" the woman asked faintly after seeing List and Achi. She spoke wind whisper. She didn't look old, just like a woman in her 30s with long emerald green hair draped over her back. There were transparent fin-like structures on her ears, forehead, shoulders, elbows, hips, and calves, which were similar to Achi, but Achi didn't have so many fins. The most exaggerated thing was on her back. There were huge butterfly-shaped fins, gently flapping circles of water. In general, she was more coquettish than Achi, but the degree of anthropomorphism was not enough. A large number of transparent fin-like structures destroyed the beauty, and some parts of her skin also had structures similar to fish scales. Her color was generally green. Achi had azure hair and blue pupils. In comparison, Achi only had a small number of transparent fin-like structures, and her skin was white, delicate, and lustrous, better than the skin of a human baby. She was more anthropomorphic, so she looked more in line with human aesthetics, far better than the old siren in front of them. However, this siren had a complete pair of feet, delicate and delicate. One could imagine how beautiful it would be if Achi also had a pair of feet. "Hello, I am a human knight, are you a siren?" List rode on Rose's back and smiled elegantly. "This little girl next to me, she is also a siren." Achi was not very enthusiastic about the siren in front of her, but simply greeted, "Hello." The old siren glanced at Achi, then turned to List. "Young human knight, I am indeed a siren. What business do you have here?" I haven't seen humans for many years, and I didn't even pay attention to the ships passing by Sapphire. Sapphire? List's eyes lit up. You know the Grand Duchy of Sapphire? When I was roaming the sea freely, Sapphire had not yet been founded. At that time, there were no ships on the sea except for ancient shipwrecks. It was when Sapphire brought a large number of ships that the sea became busy. The old siren didn't look old, but the moment she opened her mouth, she told a story from hundreds of years ago. Hearing this, List's tone suddenly changed. May I ask how many years have you experienced so far? More than 400 Xia and Dong. I can't remember them all. Over 400 years old. He was like a living fossil. According to the calculation of a Qi's adulthood, a siren probably only had a lifespan of more than 400 years. List knew that the siren in front of him was the siren that the smoke mission was looking for, and could not help but be more enthusiastic. It's a pleasure to meet the esteemed siren elder here. My name is List Tulip, a Viscount of the Grand Duchy of Sapphire. May I have the honor of knowing your name? My name? The old siren looked up at the bright moon reflected on the water, and there was a moment of absent-mindedness. Aphrodite Hector Cinethia Tethys Nemo Temis Parsephone, Stella Briseis. The corner of List's mouth twitched. Why did every siren have to give themselves such a long name of more than 200 words? Your name is very long as my sister's name. Her name is... He turned to look at Achi as if he could not remember Achi's full name. Achi was very understanding and quickly said her name. My name is Tana Histi Europamini Seleno Lucati Fulcus Bunius. Cassandra Acaroids. But I have changed my name to Acaroids Truth. You can call me Achi. Truth. You are a siren mage? The old siren was surprised, but as her eyes wandered a little between List and Achi, she had a rough idea. I used to study magic, but I only learned a few simple spells. With a common topic, the conversation was no longer awkward. List smiled and said, Achi is a great mage. A great mage? Such a young siren mage is indeed rare. The old siren nodded gently. You can call me Easy. Elder Easy. Sirens are born in the sea. There are no complicated worldly relationships like you humans. You can just call me by my name. List readily agreed. Easy. Now that the greetings were over, the conversation gradually turned into List's constant questions, and Easy answered him with her more than 400 years of experience. Although her attitude was always indifferent, Easy was not impatient with List's questions. Achi listened quietly at the side. Easy, I am very curious about sirens, especially my sister Achi, who is also a siren. But she is still very young and needs to learn a lot. I hope you can help teach her. Seeing that the other party was very cooperative, List took the opportunity to make a request. More importantly, he wanted to abduct this siren to live in his territory. However, Easy replied, sirens don't need teaching. Every siren has its own growth path. Experiencing all the joys and sorrows of the sea is the meaning of siren's existence. Achi also said, brother, Achi wants to grow on her own. List was really puzzled by the cold reaction between the two sirens. Achi was very kind and simple, and Easy's personality was also very peaceful. As creatures of the same race, even if the two of them did not have tears in their eyes when they saw each other, they would not be so indifferent. But in fact, from the beginning of looking for sirens, Achi did not have any enthusiasm for unknown sirens. Perhaps there was a certain temperament in sirens that repelled each other. He was going to go back and ask Achi, but now it was not convenient to mention it directly, so he changed the subject. Easy, the purpose of our coming to this sea is to excavate an ancient ruin. I wonder if you can guide us to the ancient ruin? Ancient ruin, you mean the ruins of the Temple of Fish Clown. Temple of Fish Clown? List heard a new word, Fish Clown, in wind language meant a monster that looks like a fish but is very ugly. EC extended her slender arm and pointed southeast with a finger that was as thin as a spring onion. Swim forward for about 50 kilometers from here, and you'll find a square coral reef. Swim 30 kilometers south from Coral Island, there is a 100-meter deep seabed puddle, and the ruins of the Temple of Fish Clown are buried in mud. Chapter 649. Ugly Undead Fish? List heard a new term. Izzy, can you tell me what kind of existence this ugly undead fish is? Do you know about the undead? I know about Ghost and Liches. He had met two Liches, Curtis Truth and the Bull Marquis. The Ghost was Virginia Truth, who had been staying in the soul storage tank in his gem space, and would only come out occasionally to chat. I've heard of liches, which are evil transformations that stimulate the power of the soul. The undead is somewhat similar to liches, but instead of stimulating the power of the soul, they use the remaining soul to control the material power of the life. When the ugly undead fish was alive, I suspect that it was at the level of magic shooter. Magic shooter? List's eyes widened. Magic shooters were existences that could fight with dragons alone, and an ugly undead fish was actually at the level of magic shooter. This was obviously too exaggerated. It's just my suspicion, and it's the strength of the ugly undead fish when it was alive. It may only have the strength of a great mage now, but its body is very strong. I found the temple of ugly undead fish when I was young and I always wanted to go in, but it always stopped me outside the temple. Time has not weakened it. Hearing that it only had the strength of a great mage, List was relieved. Magic shooters had not appeared in the eyes of the world for many years, and suddenly told him that there would be magic shooters in a ruin that had existed for thousands of years. He would never believe it. Time would make everything decay, even the representative of the top power like the dragon would die, let alone other creatures. Then List asked Izzy about the specific details of the ugly undead fish. According to Izzy, the ugly undead fish was the strongest of the ugly fish race, and it was imprisoned in the temple of ugly undead fish as a guard. It was 10 meters tall like a big standing frog, but its upper body was the head and body of a fish. It held a strange harpoon in its hand, which could release powerful water magic. One of the magic was called Water Shackle by Izzy, which could control the water to bind the opponent's body and then tear it outward. When Izzy was young, she was bound once and almost dismembered. After listening to her, List turned around and asked, "Achi, do you think you can defeat this undead fish underwater?" In the 100-meter deep water, his combat power would be severely reduced, and he might not be able to easily kill an archmage who had the home advantage. Achi nodded seriously. "Don't worry, brother. I don't think the undead spirit fish that Izzy mentioned is very strong. Achi has mastered many advanced spells. Water fusion will definitely be able to kill the undead spirit fish. We still need to be careful." List touched Achi's hair. Achi was not to be underestimated in battle. Her fighting style was quite fierce, especially the original spells such as water fusion, which were very powerful. By the time they finished talking about the ugly necromancy fish, it was already late at night. He planned to rest on this coral reef for the night and look for the Temple of Fish Clown tomorrow. At the same time, he would use the night to chat with Izzy as much as possible and inquire about her rich experience of more than 400 years of life. It would be best if he could connect with her and bring her to Black Horse Island as his personal advisor. Now, chatting was the most important thing. "Izzy, why was Achi born in a shell but you were born in a conch?" He pointed to the huge conch that Izzy was sitting on. It had a white background with brown patterns. It looked bigger than Achi's shell and had many spikes on it. The conch is also a kind of shell. Every siren is born in a shell. There is no reason for this. It's just that shells are strange and our birth is also strange. Just like you humans have tall, short, fat, and thin bodies, sirens also have different shells and different appearances. "When did you grow your feet?" "My date of adulthood was 55 years old. I was completely free from the growth fluid in the conch shell and had independent feet." She shook her white feet, and her toes were particularly beautiful. List was not a foot lover and he was still almost lost in thought. But after all, he was experienced. He did not show any reaction on the surface and his eyes were bright and clear. 55 years old, so Achi is 42 years old this year, and there are still 13 years before she reaches adulthood? 13 years was later than List expected, which was really worrying. Achi, who was listening to the conversation, could not help but feel a little disappointed. Although it was the nature of every woman to pursue youth, it was also natural for minors to want to grow up as soon as possible. Izzy smiled. "Who knows what will happen in the future? When I don't have feet, I hope to have feet. Now that I have feet, how can I not miss the time when I didn't have feet?" "Your words are always very philosophical. Probably because I have seen too much. You must have come into contact with many humans in your life, right?" List asked. Izzy's eyes were out of focus for a moment. Then he shook his head and said, "I've been on land and I've sought love, but in the end, the sea is more suitable for me. But young humans and young sirens, I still recommend you to seek love. Only after you have loved will you know the depth of affection, and only after you have been hurt will you know the value of innocence." In an instant, List felt the temperament of a female scholar lingering on Izzy. Perhaps she was not only a singer on the sea, but also a bard on the sea. "In that case, can you tell me the story of your life on the continent? Although I'm a knight, I'm also a historian." I'm compiling a monumental work called Dragons Fighting in the Wild, which records the historical changes of the continent. I hope to learn the forgotten history from you. In order to increase her persuasion, he directly took out the first few chapters of Dragons Fighting in the Wild from the gem space and handed it to Izzy for her to study. Izzy took the thick book, flipped through 2 pages and handed it back. I don't know the Serpentines. All my contact with humans happened in the Eagle Kingdom. It was best not to read it, because the rest was blank. List put away the thick book and said, "Then tell me your story." Like most naive and dreamy girls. After Izzy grew her feet, she inevitably had a strong interest in humans. She took advantage of the night to approach the coast to eavesdrop on human life. Eventually, she was discovered by the villagers while eavesdropping. The villagers were very shrewd. They did not expose her on the spot and drive her away. Instead, they coaxed her to live in their home and then told their lord. It was a handsome young nobleman who fell in love with Izzy's dazzling appearance when he saw her. Izzy was quickly intoxicated by the young nobleman's flowery words and lived a happy mermaid love. However, the nobleman eventually abandoned her and married another nobleman girl. And she, after crying, returned to the sea. After a few decades, hearing the news of the nobleman's death, she returned to the land and quietly attended the nobleman's funeral. The scene at the funeral made her let go of the hurt she had suffered. She began to learn human magic and tried to travel the continent to see more local customs. But it only lasted for half a year. The inland environment was really bad and my skin was getting drier day by day. So I gave up traveling and returned to live in the sea. Izzy said with a sigh. After that, I occasionally went to other seas to live, but I still stayed in this sea where I was born and raised. This was Izzy's life. There were no ups and downs, no life and death parting. Even the only time she was hurt was when she was abandoned by the nobleman. The noble knight still loved her, but because of his noble status, he had to marry a human wife and have children to inherit the family. So he abandoned the siren. The siren's unique appearance and infertility. Chapter 650. The story of the siren Izzy was not earth-shattering, and there was nothing special about her travels across the continent. At least, it was not worthy of being included in Dragons Raging in the Wild. Most importantly, she had never been involved with the nobles of the Eagle Kingdom, so the information she knew was very limited. But her experience was not entirely without merit. For example, she once learned to play the piano from the master pianist Cherny Windmill. Cherny was a famous pianist in the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom. He once traveled to the Eagle Kingdom and met Izzy. He told Izzy how he created his famous song Uriah by the Water. It was an autumn evening. Cherny, who had traveled around the world, walked to the border between the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom and stopped in the countryside of a small border town. He took the piano he carried with him from the carriage and was about to adjust it to practice a piece. Suddenly, an elk sprang out of the forest and ran straight to him. But because it was by the river, the elk had nowhere to go and just wanted to jump into the river and swim to the other side. However, a steel fork flew from a distance and quickly killed the elk. Then Cherny saw a banshee with light green hair dancing like a snake coming out of the forest. She had drooping eyelids, a slender figure, snow-white skin and bright red lips. Cherny quickly fell in love with her. However, when the banshee dragged the dead elk, she only raised her eyelids to look at him. At that moment he seemed to be stiff and could not move, even his eyeballs could not move. He could only watch the banshee's back disappear into the forest. He did not know how long had passed. When he woke up again, he had been saved by servants and local residents and was lying on a bed. After listening to the local residents, he learned that the banshee was called Uriah. It was said that she was a snake banshee who lived in this forest and had 3 sisters. The eldest sister was called Stheno. She had dark green hair and could kill a powerful World of Warcraft with one punch. Uriah was the second sister. She had light green hair and could fly like a sky knight with one leap. The youngest sister was called Medusa. She had bright red hair and could control snakes. The eyes of the 3 sisters were so powerful that anyone who looked into their eyes would be turned to stone. If the stone was broken, the person would die. If it was not broken, the body would recover in a few days. Normally, the 3 Medusa sisters and the local residents would mind their own business. There had been nobles who tried to enter the wild forest to capture the 3 beautiful Medusa demonesses, but they either disappeared in the forest or returned empty-handed. Not even a trace of the 3 sisters could be found. Cherny coveted Uriah's beauty as well, so he took up residence there. He was looking forward to seeing Uriah again, but unfortunately he hadn't seen her for many days. He turned his longing into musical notes and composed the famous song Euryale by the Sea. Do gorgons really exist? Liszt was dubious. It was true that vampires and liches did exist, but looking at a snake-haired siren that could petrify people with a single glance felt a little surreal. This kind of ability was too powerful. Moreover, they were incomparably beautiful. Even if their hair was a little strange, it was believed that many curious knights would still flock to them. Izzy shook her head. I've also asked Master Czerny. He told me that the world is far bigger than what we see, and that no one can take everything as they please. In other words, no one has seen the three Medusa sisters after that? I don't know. I didn't pay much attention to them. Maybe they're like the sirens. After experiencing the complexity of human life, they returned to their homeland and lived a simple life. In short, Izzy had many stories similar to the three Medusa sisters. For example, the Minotaurs roamed the Blast Furnace Kingdom and the Barren Stone Plain. They had horns like bulls and roared angrily to chase away invaders. In the primeval forest in the west of the Grand Duchy of Rose lived giant ogres with clubs in their hands. They lived a life of eating raw meat and drinking blood. Someone had seen a winged harpy flying like an eagle in a mountain in the Eagle Kingdom. The daughter of a duke of a duchy had seen a unicorn in the forest and escaped from her wedding with the help of the unicorn. She did not know where she went. On a full moon night, the howling of wolves often resounded in a nameless castle. It was said that the master of the castle was a werewolf who could transform into a silver wolf. Izzy had also seen a knight who seemed to be riding in midair with nothing under his butt. After inquiring, she learned that the knight was carried by a knight the arch-mount. Only those who had died once could see it. The elderly liked to tell stories. The same was true for the old siren, Izzy. At first she only answered when Liszt asked. But after midnight she basically kept telling stories. Some stories were interesting and some were boring. Achi listened carefully. Liszt had already begun to get distracted. Smoke slowly appeared in front of his eyes. Mission completed. Reward, Siren Izzy. Then the smoke transformed into new serpentines. Mission, Siren can guide you, but she doesn't have much strength to swim the sea. You need to go through the hidden dangers in the sea by yourself. Please defeat the remaining necro-ugly fish and excavate the temple of ugly fish. Reward, mysterious jewelry. Oh, the reward is mysterious jewelry? Liszt silently thought. It shouldn't be some kind of shellfish pearl, right? In this world, gems, crystals, and jades were exclusive nouns that referred to three types of special stones. Gems and crystals originated from the production of dragons, while jades were formed from the condensed magic power of the earth. And jewelry specifically referred to ornaments. Gems and crystals could be made into ornaments, complete jades could be made into ornaments, pearls, corals, amber, and the like could also be made into ornaments. Gold, silver, mithril, orichalcum, and the like could also be made into ornaments. These were called jewelry. Previously he already had a black giant clam that produced black pearls, a pink conch that produced pink pearls, and a golden lip shell that produced golden pearls. He didn't know what shell would be given this time and what pearls would be produced. I hope it's not a pearl shell that produces white pearls. There are many pearl shells raised in the Blue Dragon Lake of the Grand Duke, but they aren't worth much. With this thought in mind, he soon fell asleep on the sampan while listening to Izzy's rambling. When he woke up again, it was already the dawn of the next day. He rubbed his eyes. Looking at the reef in the distance, Izzy was feeding the rainbow whale Lolth with some kind of fruit. This rainbow whale was very friendly to everyone, and sometimes Liszt worried that it would be abducted. On the other side of the reef, Achi was sitting on a shell, holding a book and reading. Seeing that Liszt had woken up, Achi immediately swam over. "Brother, you're awake. Didn't you sleep?" He vaguely remembered that when he fell asleep, Izzy was still telling a story and Achi was still listening carefully. As a result, when he woke up, the two sirens were still full of energy. Achi slept. "Sirens sleep for a short time, brother." Of course Liszt knew this. He just got up and was a little confused. Then he washed up by the reef and ate a sumptuous meal. Then he went to say goodbye to Izzy. "Izzy, your story is very interesting. When Achi and I discover the Temple of Fish Clown, I hope to have a good chat with you again. Falling asleep while chatting isn't a good conversation." Liszt waved his hand awkwardly. He already knew that Izzy did not refuse. He took Achi in the direction that Izzy had pointed out. First, they would excavate the Temple of Fish Clown, complete the task and get the reward. For the original, flawless chapter, please go to the Chidian app and subscribe. Sometimes Old Bai would find problems and modify it after uploading it. It was difficult to correct it in time through other channels. Chapter 651. 50 kilometers to find the island, 40 kilometers to find the 100-meter deep pit. It didn't take long for List to find the Temple of Fish Clown. It was an ancient ruin full of aquatic plants and half of it was covered by mud. It occupied a large area with hundreds of stone pillars supporting the circular dome of the palace, isolating the inside. There were no fish or shrimps swimming around the palace, only the aquatic plants and corals swaying with the current. Big brother, leave it to Achi to deal with the ugly necromancer. Achi stepped on the shell and stood in front of List, asking for permission to fight. She was born with the ability to control water, and now she was proficient in water magic, so her underwater combat ability was far better than List's. The main reason was that once List used his combat energy, he would break through Loltha's magic, rainbow-breathing membrane. Once the rainbow-breathing membrane was broken, he would have to hold his breath, and it would be very difficult to use his combat energy again. Plus, his combat energy was of the fire element, so it was almost impossible to use it underwater. At most, he could attach it to the long sword and directly attack the opponent's body. "Be careful, I'll help you," List said solemnly with the Ice Soul Dragon slaying sword in his hand. He hadn't mastered the Ice Spin skill of the Ice Soul Dragon slaying sword, and the Freeze skill hadn't been activated yet, so he couldn't increase his combat ability underwater. His main role was to support Achi in hunting the ugly necromancer. According to Easy's instructions, as long as one stepped into the range of the Temple of Fish Clown, the ugly necromancer would rush out of the temple to chase and kill the intruder. So when Achi stepped into a corner of the temple, a strong current suddenly appeared. Then a ghost-like monster came out of the water like a plume of smoke. Just as Izzy had described, the monster was 10 meters tall, and it looked like a standing frog. Its upper body was the head and body of a fish, and its webbed legs were in a circle. Blah blah blah. As soon as the ugly necromancer appeared, it let out a strange, high-pitched cry, then raised the harpoon in its hand, and a circle of magic light rippled on the harpoon. Without any extra work, it directly threw the magic at Achi. However, Achi had plenty of experience hunting sea monsters in the sea. She had also raised her water wave shield a long time ago. Then, she instantly cast powerful spells such as water whirlpool fusion on the undead spirit fish like they were free. Her combat style leaned towards violent output, probably influenced by List. List would always talk about his battle experience. Don't talk nonsense, attack first, don't use a normal attack if you can, and don't be lenient if you can. Achi regarded these experiences as a guideline. As such, he immediately used all sorts of high-level magic. In any case, the undead clownfish wouldn't chase him too far out of the temple of the clownfish. If he really ran out of mana, he would just run away without any hesitation. However, unexpectedly, with the release of a wave of high-level magic from Achi, the seawater was instantly stirred up into a murky mess, and the mud at the bottom of the sea rolled, as if a black tornado had been set off above the Temple of Fish Clown. The undead spirit fish's resistance magic had been completely annihilated by Achi's magic. He couldn't retaliate at all. 10 minutes later, Achi's chest heaved violently and she gasped for breath. The magic power in her body had reached the bottom. She then began to swim out of the Temple of Fish Clown according to List's instructions. Beware of the undead spirit fish's counterattack. However, after running away, the undead spirit fish didn't chase after her until the magic was released, and the murky seawater was washed away by the current, and the sea became clear again. List and Achi looked at each other in disbelief. The undead spirit fish disappeared, and a corner of the Temple of Fish Clown was also collapsed by magic, revealing a deep hole. What was even more surprising was that there was a steel fork stuck diagonally in the battle area, half buried in the mud. "Brother, this is the steel fork of the undead spirit fish." "I know." List looked at the quietly collapsed corner of the Temple of Fish Clown, and it took him a long time to react. "Achi, the undead spirit fish couldn't have been killed by your magic, right? Logically, even if it hid in the temple, it would bring its own weapon back, and shouldn't have left it outside." Did Achi kill it? Let's go and check it out." The two approached the Temple of Fish Clown, but there was no movement. They picked up the steel fork that the undead spirit fish abandoned, but there was no movement. They touched the collapsed hole, but there was still no movement. When they entered the temple through the collapsed hole, there was still no movement. Obviously, the undead spirit fish really did die in Achi's wave of magic. EC's so-called great mage level now seemed like a joke. EC herself didn't have much fighting power, so she mistakenly thought that the undead spirit fish was very strong. After entering the temple of Fish Clown and confirming that there was no danger, List then looked at the inside of the temple. It was simple but grand, and there was a hint of luxury in its simplicity. Although half of the area was covered in mud, one could still feel the vastness of the inside of the temple. Thick stone pillars supported a simple dome, and on both sides of the walkway were huge statues. With the illumination of crystal lamps, the details of the statues could be seen clearly. "Brother, what kind of monster are these statues?" "I don't know, but I guess they should be a race of the sea that is more powerful than the undead spirit fish." "Achi, look." The 4 statues closest to the door are obviously the undead spirit fish, the same race as the undead spirit fish. The statues at the back don't seem to be undead spirit fish, but more like humanoid monsters. There were 4 humanoid monsters, all with 2 arms. There were also 4 humanoid monsters at the back, but they had 4 arms. Then there were also 4 humanoid monsters at the back, all with 6 arms. The appearance of these 12 humanoid monsters, other than the number of arms and the strength of their bodies, were very similar in other aspects. They had fish scales and fins, and 3 thick fingers held different weapons. Their heads looked like a snake's head, but also like a fish's head, which was quite similar to the undead spirit fish. And then later, another statue of a different image appeared. There were also 4 statues, but they were images of strong women. However, these women were slightly similar to the singing demons, but they looked rough, with some fish scales and fins on their bodies. What was interesting was that the 4 statues that appeared at the back were 4 armed women, followed by 4 6-armed women. Because half of the holy temple was buried in mud, only the upper bodies of these statues could be seen. List rode on the back of the rainbow whale Lolth, feeling that each statue was very large and seemed to be a replica of the original statue. The 4 undead spirit fish statues at the entrance of the temple were exactly the same size as the undead spirit fish, and all the statues after that were larger than the undead spirit fish statues. Just as he was looking at these statues, trying to speculate some information, Achi suddenly pulled his arm and whispered, "Brother, look at the main seat of the holy temple. Is that a mermaid?" "What a big mermaid." Only then did List notice that at the end of the palace, in a dim place, there was a huge stone throne. Because the steps were very high, it was not covered by mud. On the throne there was a vivid statue. The statue had a human upper body and a huge fish tail, perfectly matching the classic image of mermaids recorded in night novels, folklore, and magic books. Her fish tail was coiled on the throne, below the navel was densely covered with fish scales, and above the navel was clean, no different from a human. The biggest difference was that the body of the mermaid statue was at least 20 meters long, which could be said to be huge. However, the next moment, List's magic eye's gaze fell on the huge chest of the mermaid statue. There was a teardrop-shaped jewel shining with an azure blue brilliance. It seemed to be flowing with water, attribute magic power that was denser than any other magic power. Chapter 652. Gesturing to the 7-colored whale Lolth to swim to the chest of the mermaid statue, List stared at the teardrop-shaped jewel about the size of a fist. For him, this jewel is not small, on the contrary, a fist-sized jewel is definitely huge. However, for the mermaid statue, it is like wearing a broken diamond on the chest, and the size is a bit out of proportion to the statue. List did not reach out and directly take off the jewel, hanging in the form of a pendant on the chest of the statue, but focused on summoning the smoke quest. Quest completed, reward, Tears of the Mermaid. Then a new quest appeared. Quest, the mermaid statue in the Temple of Fish Clown. It is unknown who carved it. Much history has been submerged in the long river of history. The most important thing is to grasp the present. Maybe this Tears of the Mermaid will be given to Achi, it will have an unexpected effect on her. Reward, Guardian of the Ugly Dead Fish. Tears of the Mermaid. List waved the smoke quest away and then gently took off the pendant. The rope that strung the tears of the mermaid quickly decayed, leaving only a fist-sized teardrop-shaped jewel. Now it looks like a teardrop. Originally he planned to keep it for himself and study it slowly. After all, it is a treasure left behind by the ancient races. Maybe it will have a powerful effect. But since the smoke quest has given a hint, it is obvious that Tears of the Mermaid is more suitable for Achi to use. After a simple play, he handed the jewel to Achi. Achi, I feel that this jewel has a strong water attribute magic. Look at its shape, it is better to call it Tears of the Mermaid. I will give it to you. Maybe you can study it. Give it to Achi. Achi was a little surprised and then smiled happily. Thank you, brother. Achi will take good care of it. Not for safekeeping but for use in research. It is full of water attribute magic. Well, You study it first. I'm going to dig out the lower bodies of these statues and see what kind of creatures are carved. List did not talk nonsense, took out the bone shovel and began to dig the mud covering the temple of Fish Clown. Just as List was busy digging the mud, Achi was already holding the tears of the mermaid, sitting on the shell and studying it. She was in a good mood, not only because the tear of the mermaid was very beautiful and the blue color matched her temperament, but also because this jewel was given by List. For her, as long as List gave her something, she would be very happy. Big Brother is really good at coming up with names. Mermaid's Tears. And it sounds really nice. It's hanging on the chest of the mermaid statue and it's shaped like this. It really looks like a mermaid's tears. Channeling magic. He activated the tears of the mermaid and was ready to carefully study the magic structure of this jewelry so that he could figure out how to use it. It had magic power and it was a pendant. It could be seen that the tears of the mermaid was a piece of magic equipment. Moreover, there was even a temple built on top of the statue. Clearly it was no ordinary magical equipment. Achi did not have magic eyes, but she could feel that the inside of the mermaid's tears was full of flowing magic, and it was very intimate with her. She closed her eyes and let her perception guide the magic, swimming in the magic that made up the magic runes. Soon, she noticed that the magic composition of the tears of the mermaid was very regular, and the regular revealed a profound atmosphere, especially those magic runes, which seemed to be not artificial but naturally generated. There are no traces of artificial carving. Strange, is the tears of the mermaid a naturally generated magic equipment, or is it really the tears of the mermaid? Achi suddenly thought that it was unlikely but not impossible, because the mermaid statue was high up in the main seat. The clownfish, who was at the level of an archmage, was only ranked at the end of the temple statue, followed by the six-armed monster, six-armed woman. Each layer looked more noble and powerful. From this, it could be inferred that the mermaid definitely had great power. The metabolites of the body of a powerful creature would naturally also have all kinds of incredible power. For example, any bit of the body excretion of a dragon was a precious treasure. Suddenly, she keenly noticed that the internal magic runes of the tears of the mermaid were condensing in a strange pattern, and there was an obvious node in it. The term node was proposed by Liszt, which meant the midpoint of the magic convergence. At first, it was to explain the concept of the magic net, but later, Achi thought that the node could be brought into the magic circle. The magic circle was composed of many magic runes forming a node, which then formed a complete magic circle. If the node was found, the magic circle could be easily torn apart. She could also rely on constantly revising the node to reorganize the magic circle. The reason why she could create many original spells was because of the node concept. So, what is this node for? Thinking she had already used magic to guide and activate the node. The next moment, the tears of the mermaid burst into a bright light. In the light condensed twisted threads like a spider web, spreading around through the statue, through the colorful whale Lolth, through Liszt who was digging in the mud, through the temple of the clownfish and through the vast sea. Finally, it dissipated in the distant endless sea. And holding the tears of the mermaid, Achi's closed eyelids trembled, and in less than half a breath she fainted on the shell. As she fainted, the light of the tears of the mermaid instantly extinguished, falling from her hand to the shell, and then cracks appeared on the surface of the water droplet. On the other side, Liszt, who was digging in the mud, was startled by the blue twisted threads that suddenly passed through his body, thinking that someone had attacked him. He hurriedly turned to dodge, just in time to see Achi faint and the light of the tears of the mermaid extinguished. Gotcha. As far as he could see, the tears of the mermaid shattered in the blink of an eye, then turned into a pool of powder, dissipating with the current and disappearing. He had no time to care about how the tears of the mermaid disappeared. He quickly rushed over, picked up the unconscious Achi and shouted, "Achi, Achi!" He was very flustered. Achi was far more important than any other person. Achi did not respond, but her chest was still undulating. Liszt forced himself to calm down, quickly cast magic eyes, and found that the magic in Achi's body was very unstable, in a boiling state. And some magic suddenly disappeared, and some magic suddenly appeared, as if it was constantly exchanging with the magic of the outside world. However, it was impossible for the magic of the outside world to be so abundant that it was constantly exchanging. What the hell is going on? Why did Achi faint for no reason? No, it's the tears of the mermaid. The tears of the mermaid stimulated Achi and made Achi faint. The vision just now was caused by the tears of the mermaid. The smoke mission prompted me to give the tears of the mermaid to Achi. His face sank and he blamed himself. He should have eliminated the danger first and then handed it over to Achi. I hope it won't really hurt Achi. If he hadn't used the smoke mission for a long time and gradually understood that the smoke mission was more derived from the projection of his own will, he would have suspected that the person behind the smoke mission was preparing to attack him. First cut out his important helper Achi and then deal with him. Just like raising a poisonous insect, when the poisonous insect matured, it could be harvested. I hope Achi will be fine otherwise. He didn't say the second half of the sentence because he really didn't know how to threaten the person behind the smoke mission. But before he could figure out how to deal with the possible existence of the person behind the smoke mission, Achi woke up slowly, her eyes still confused, but she said a sentence. Brother, Achi touched the magic network. Then she fainted again. Chapter 653. Magic Net. List, who was holding Achi, had his eyes lit up. His previous worries suddenly disappeared, leaving only surprise. She touched the magic net. Achi touched the magic net under the stimulation of the tears of the mermaid? Jonas Moongrass said that an archmage needs to touch the magic net to advance to a magic shooter. It turned out that the smoke mission did not have a mastermind behind it, it was just a projection of his will. Perhaps it was because of his constant subconscious suggestion that Achi could advance to a magic shooter, so there was this mission of the ruins map, and then he got this tears of the mermaid. Thinking of this, List sighed again. He sighed again. I didn't expect that Achi would advance into a magic shooter before I succeeded in riding a dragon. Strictly speaking, she's just an underage girl. I have to say, Achi's talent is really strong. Izzy is also a siren and has learned magic, but she only knows a few ordinary spells. Brushing the scattered blue hair on Achi's face behind her ear, List continued to use magic eyes to observe the situation of magic in Achi's body. The invisible phenomenon of exchanging magic power was like dispelling the clouds and seeing the sun. It was not exchanging with free magic, but connecting to the unknown magic net and constantly exchanging magic power in the magic net. In this way, the source of magic power of a magic shooter is no longer drawn from the free magic of the outside world, but directly from the magic net. Does this mean that even on the battlefield, magic shooters can still rely on the magic power of the magic net to release powerful magic? If this was the case, then the status of magic shooters would instantly rise to a terrifying level. And it was very likely to be true. After all, magic shooters were known to be strong enough to fight dragons alone, second only to the peak strength of the Dragon Knight. Any warrior profession without a dragon would probably not be able to beat a magic shooter. According to the current cultivation system that List saw in the world, the knight had dominated everything, and the inheritance of the ancient warriors and ancient mages were declining. Only magic shooters, although slightly declining, did not go downhill too much. They were still the mainstream cultivation system and indispensable. The knight had the Dragon Knight, and magic shooters were all peak occupations that suppressed the era. Achi is already advancing towards becoming a high mage. Touching the magic net once is more or less equivalent to connecting to it, and I'm about to succeed in riding a dragon. I hope the enchanting dragon soul fruit will work and charm the little fire dragon Leo. Chirp. Lolth the rainbow whale was wandering around, providing List with the spell rainbow breathing membrane. Achi did not need the help of this kind of magic. Even if she was unconscious, she could still breathe freely underwater. This was an instinct. List saw that she did not wake up for a long time, so he put her into the shell first. While waiting for her to wake up, he continued his unfinished work. The bone shovel easily dug the soil. The lower body of the six-armed woman statue closest to the main mermaid statue was finally exposed to List's vision. The lower body was not a human body but a huge twisted body. It looked a little like a mermaid's fishtail, but also a little like a serpent's snake body. He continued to dig out a statue of a four-armed woman. After the lower half of her body was exposed, it was also a mixture of a snake and a fish. It was the same for the two-armed woman. Next was the six-armed monster statue. Its lower body was the same, but it had ferocious fins. There was no need to dig out the rest of the statues. He directly jumped over and dug out a statue of a clownfish. The lower body of the statue was an upright frog-like body. Looking at these statues, List pondered for a moment. He said to himself, "These statues are a bit like the Naga in the game. Why don't I call them Naga?" The Naga with the upper body of a female is called the upper Naga. They are two-armed, four-armed, and six-armed respectively. The Naga with the upper body of a monster is called the lower Naga. They are also two-armed, four-armed, and six-armed respectively. And so, the race that this fish clown temple represented had already become clear. The ruler was the mermaid, the middle power was the upper naga and the lower naga, and the bottom power was the clownfish. I just don't know if the mermaid, the naga, and the clownfish should be classified as one species. Judging from their biological form, they should have reproductive isolation. Maybe this is a mixed marine civilization of many races. The mermaid is the ruler, the upper naga are the nobles, the lower naga are the civilians, and the clownfish are the slaves? It was a pity that there was nothing else in this temple of clown except for these statues and the broken tear of the mermaid. It was impossible to restore the history of its founding. If I want to record this civilization into the Dragon Wars in the wild, I still have to complete it. List shook his head. He had too many works planned to write now, and the Dragon Wars in the wild had long been put aside indefinitely. Perhaps when he became the Lord of Dragon Domain one day and his lifespan was greatly increased, he would finish this historical masterpiece when he was bored. Time passed by. List ate some dry food underwater. It was already dark outside the Temple of Clown, indicating that night had arrived. He was about to lose his patience and was ready to take Achi away with the shell and leave this place. At this moment, the magic power in Achi's body suddenly subsided, and she slowly woke up. Brother. You're awake. How do you feel? Is there anything wrong? Achi's hazy expression quickly returned to normal, and her pair of blue eyes became brighter and clearer. Achi is very good, brother. I can't feel better now. Achi was unconscious just now, right? It felt like a long dream. In the dream, Achi's thoughts turned into a ray of light and swam freely in the sea of magic. List asked eagerly, was that the magic net? Achi carefully recalled and nodded. Yes, it was the feeling of touching the magic net. Brother, Achi already knows why the mages of the Moon Empire declined. With the help of the tear of the mermaid's magic formation, Achi briefly touched the magic net and felt the vastness of the magic net. It was just that it was shrinking and only magic shooters could touch it. Tell me in detail. Yes. Achi began to describe the magic net that she had touched with great effort. According to her feeling, the magic net was not a net. It was indeed a bit similar to the field that List had described before, but it still had some of the characteristics of a net. This net, or this field, shrouded the entire world, at least the part that Achi could feel was shrouding every corner of the world. If the magic net had not shrunk, then every mage would be a node and could cast spells with the help of the magic net. But because of the magic net's shrinking, ordinary mages have lost their ability to be nodes and can only absorb magic floating around. But magic shooters can still cast spells with the help of the magic net. No wonder. List suddenly understood. Mages with the support of the magic net were obviously not afraid of the knight's charge. But when the magic net shrunk, ordinary mages were immediately defeated, and the knight's charge formed the so-called anti-magic zone. Achi continued, in Achi's feeling just now, brother, you are like a smaller version of the magic net. You have your own field and net, so the knight's training in battle will not be restricted by the magic net. On the contrary, when a large number of knight gather, their respective magic nets will resonate, and thus expand the influence of the magic net. Then is the magic net still continuing to shrink? Yes. That means that magic shooters will lose the support of the magic net sooner or later. Achi does not know, but with the current extent of the magic net's shrinking, it will probably only abandon magic shooters after thousands of years. Chapter 654. List needed to digest the information about the weave, hoping to use it for his own night training. After all, Achi said that he felt like an independent version of the weave, which would probably have some similarities with the real weave. But right now he was most concerned about Achi. Achi, can you continue to access the weave? The reason why Achi was able to access the weave just now was because of the magic array activated by the tears of the mermaid. Now there is no way to enter the weave. But Achi has already memorized the information about the entrance to the weave. With some preparations she should be able to access the weave freely soon. So, you will soon be promoted to a magic shooter? Yes. Achi could not hold back her laughter and whispered, my brother is a dragon knight, and Achi is also a magic shooter. List took Achi's hand in high spirits. Ah, that's right. A dragon knight and a magic shooter. With such an inflated strength there was nothing to be afraid of. Whether it was the Sapphire Grand Duke who wanted to rob his Ghost Blade inheritance, or the possible dragon-slaying war launched by Alonso Cassiopeia, it was not a big deal for him. Perhaps Leo was too young and he was only a new dragon knight. His combat power could not guarantee that he could resist the dragon knight for many years. With Achi's assistance, The Dragon Knight had to carefully consider whether it would be killed under the baptism of magic. Dragon fighting energy could defeat magic, but the level of magic casting would be different. Achi, you have to continue to work hard and get promoted to a magic shooter as soon as possible. I will also strive to get Leo's approval as soon as possible and become a real Dragon Knight. Yes. Let's rest for the night above the Temple of Fish Clown and see if we can take Isra to Black Horse Island tomorrow. By the way, Achi, I feel that although you and Isra are both sirens, you don't feel close to your own kind. Why is that? List asked his own doubts. Achi is not sure. Although she is a siren, Achi feels that she is not the same kind. Achi thought carefully, probably just like elves do not feel that they are the same kind. Sirens are the elves of the sea and they have the same thinking. Hearing this, List expressed his understanding. Achi was born in a scallop shell, while Easy was born in a conch shell, so they were indeed not of the same species. The two quickly left the temple of the ugly fish. At this time, List saw the harpoon stuck in the entrance of the temple. He suddenly remembered that the reward of the smoke mission was protection of the ugly fish. Could it be this harpoon? He motioned for Achi to wait for a moment, and then pulled out a very large harpoon. The harpoon was the size of a pillar with 5 spikes at the front. It was about 5 meters long. It wasn't made of metal, but some kind of special bone that was polished and pieced together. In the observation of the magic eyes, there was a faint mana retroaction light inside which was light blue. It should be water attribute magic. Amidst the pale blue light, there was also a pale green light, somewhat similar to the magic light of a lich like Curtis Truth. Don't tell me the undead spirit fish is hiding in this harpoon? He wasn't in a hurry to study it. He first dragged the harpoon to the surface of the sea and released the sampan before slowly studying the harpoon and the necro fish. At the same time he summoned the smoke mission. Sure enough, it was completed. Mission completed. Reward, protection of the ugly fish. The new mission was quickly issued and it made him feel refreshed. Mission: since Achi already has the ability to advance to magic shooter, as a half-step Dragon Knight, you have to work hard. Little Fire Dragon Leo is the first dragon you have. No matter what means you use, conquer it first and then talk about other things. Reward, perfection of Chi. Conquer Leo. It seems that the enigmatic dragon fruit is used as a drug. List suppressed the excitement in his heart and didn't continue to be excited. Everything had to wait until he conquered Leo. At that time he would not only be a Dragon Knight, but also a Sky Knight at perfection. Achi sat in the shell and pondered. Touching the magic net had a huge impact on her. She needed time to digest and find a way to touch the magic net again to truly advance to magic shooter. List ate a delicious meal and began to study the harpoon. This harpoon was definitely a weapon similar to magic equipment, and the undead spirit fish was called protection, so it should be able to be controlled. Usually he would leave this kind of research to Achi or Chris. However, Achi was thinking seriously, so List didn't disturb her and decided to study by himself. He ran a little further to avoid affecting Achi. Then he poured Chi into it and tried to activate the harpoon. Unfortunately, he had fire attribute Chi, which was obviously incompatible with the harpoon's attribute. After pouring Chi into the harpoon, not only did it not activate it, but it also caused the magic inside the harpoon to riot, almost destroying the weapon. Forget it, I'll study it later. He carefully moved the gem space and finally made a space of 5 meters. Then he wrapped the harpoon with Chi and put it into the gem space. The night passed like this. Early the next morning, the two continued on their way back to the place where they met Isis. Sadly, EC was no longer there, and Achi couldn't sense EC's location. Big brother EC has left this reef. Is that so? List felt that it was a pity. Although Isis was old, it shouldn't be a problem for her to live for another few decades so she could still play a role. However, since Isis had left, it meant that she had no intention of coming into contact with human life again. So List didn't force it. Since she doesn't want to go back with us, then let's go. Don't worry about her. 2 days later in the evening, List and Achi returned to Flower Town. However, unexpectedly, the Count hadn't returned yet. Calculating the time, it took him about a week to excavate the Temple of Fish Clown. The voyage from the Roaring Estuary to Coral Island took 10 days. If the Count and others had not set off in advance, they would not have come back so soon. There were 2 most important things that happened in the territory. One was that Marcus had sorted out the merits of the knight who participated in the war. After the Grand Duke's iron or merits were settled, the merits could be distributed according to the proportion. The other was that two unusual plants were found after the census of the farmland in the territory. One is a very vigorous and huge peanut seedling, located in a peanut plantation opened in Newport Town, Black Horse Island. The other is a significantly taller and thicker oat seedling, belonging to the few oat fields preserved in Flower Town. Because there was no oat worm in the territory, after having the wheat sprite and two little wheat worms, the territory officials had decided not to plant oats anymore. This was the last crop. Unexpectedly, an oat worm was bred. List personally went to check and confirm the existence of the oat worm. He told Flower Town Administrative Officer Isaiah to protect the worm stock. The next day he did not go to Black Horse Island to check whether the peanut worm was pregnant. Chapter 655. On the Dodo Island. The fruits of the human skull tree hung all over the branches. No one picked them and not many birds flew over to peck at them. Many of the fruits simply rotted on the tree. Every time List came he would pick some and bring them back. He mainly dug out the seeds of the human skull fruit for planting in the human skull tree plantation. However, he was too lazy to spend too much time picking the human skull fruit. His time was precious and there was no need to work hard for a few seeds. Achi, wait here. I'll go feed the little fire dragon Leo. Okay. Achi nodded simply. She seemed a little absent-minded. She was still immersed in the extraordinary experience of touching the magic net. List went straight to the crater of the volcano. After calling out, the already hungry Leo rushed out. Previously, List and Achi had gone to excavate the ruins so it could only starve on the island. Now that it had turned into a body of flesh and blood, it landed in front of List. It roared loudly to express its dissatisfaction. Its eyes were also very fierce. It was as if List was only its *T shoveling officer. Seeing this, List only smiled. He was too lazy to argue with it. It was just an ungrateful wretch. You want to eat beef? Leo urged. Roar. List took out the grilled steak bit by bit and gave it to Leo to swallow. When Leo was halfway through eating, List began to put the steak with the mystical dragon's soul fruit to Leo's mouth. Dragons were very intelligent, and List was afraid that it would become suspicious of the mystical dragon's soul fruit, so he covered it up. Leo, who was eating happily, did not seem to know the sinister intentions of the human in front of it. It directly chewed the steak twice and swallowed it. After it had eaten its fill, it was time to feed List back to his cultivation. Just as it was about to stand up and spit out dragon breath, its head suddenly sank and its body staggered, almost falling. Seeing this, List's eyes lit up. However, he did not do anything and continued to observe. Leo's stagger was just the beginning. It quickly stood up, but its eyelids became heavier. He seemed to be dozing off. At this time, List finally made his move. He quietly touched Leo's back, but Leo didn't react. He didn't even bat an eyelid. When he gradually crawled towards the Dragon Fong platform, Leo seemed to realize something and his body started to struggle weakly. However, the degree of struggle was too small. He couldn't even turn his head around. It could only allow List to support its scales to the dragon tooth platform. It was located between the forelimbs and the shoulder blades, where the neck and the body met. There was a flat area the size of a wash basin, and there was a protruding bone in front of it. On both sides of the bone were whirlpools. Such a structure was just right for people to ride comfortably. Looking at the dragon tooth platform in front of him, List did his best to restrain his excitement. He placed his feet on the whirlpool, then sat down on the platform with his thumping heart. In the next second, he felt refreshed, and the battle energy in his body uncontrollably connected with Leo's magic energy under his butt. Boom. In the blink of an eye, the world changed. It became as if time had stopped, leaving only him riding a dragon. This feeling was exceptionally wonderful, mysterious, and indescribable. Then he felt himself floating, or to be precise, his soul floated as if his soul had left his body. There was no nervousness, only curiosity about the wonderful feeling. As he flew, the scene in front of him suddenly changed. It was a scene of the end of the world when a volcano erupted. He was standing on the cliff of the crater, facing a huge fire dragon tied up by colorful chains. The fire dragon's body flickered with flames as it stared at him fiercely. Leo? List was a little puzzled. It looked like the little fire dragon Leo, but its body was more than 10 times larger, and its ferocity exceeded the beauty of a dragon's strength. The fire dragon did not respond. It just stared at List, flames spewing out of its nostrils. It wanted to move, but it was held back by the colorful chains, unable to move. Taking advantage of this gap, List looked down at himself. He wore the leather armor he wore today. He had no weapons or other equipment, including the gem space on his chest. Am I in a soul state? He looked at the locked fire dragon in front of him, and then at the misty smoke entwined around his body. He seemed to understand the situation. Leo. Is this an illusion after riding on the dragon-tooth platform, or is it a spiritual connection? He looked at the colorful chains on the fire dragon and the misty smoke around his body. It should not be an illusion, but some kind of spiritual communication. He paused. He raised his head and responded to the ferocious fire dragon's gaze without any fear. This should be the first contract contest of the dragon-tooth platform? The power of the mystifying dragon's soul fruit should turn into colorful chains to bind Leo's soul, which is the evil fire dragon in front of me. And he himself was also a projection of the soul. However, the smoke entwined around his body seemed to be the power of another smoke dragon that belonged to the holy dragon sequence. He waved his hand and naturally put a wisp of smoke into his palm. Is this the power of fate? If I defeat Leo's soul today, will I be able to ride the dragon? Whoosh. He seemed to have sensed List's thoughts. Leo, who was bound by the colorful chains in front of him, let out a low roar. List smiled lightly. The power of the mystifying dragon's soul fruit is really strong. If it was a normal spiritual contest, I might not be the evil dragon's match. But now it seems to be easy to defeat Leo's soul. Why don't I take this chance to test the power of fate? His fingers trembled slightly. The smoke entwined around his body immediately gathered in his palm. After a series of transformations, it condensed into an azure greatsword. It was his sword, Ice Soul Dragon Slaying Sword. No, I want a fire attribute sword. His heart moved. The Ice Soul Dragon Slaying Sword instantly turned crimson red. Waves of fire attribute magic spread out and circulated. Satisfied, he held the sword hilt. List walked step by step towards the restrained evil fire dragon. Leo, I know you are Leo. You are an elemental dragon with evil thoughts in your heart. This is not good, very bad. I am a knight filled with a sense of justice. As my mount, you must also abide by justice. Today, let me destroy the evil thoughts in your heart. After saying that, clang, the red Ice Soul Dragon Slaying Sword danced. A powerful wave of fire warrior energy instantly burst out and slashed the evil fire dragon's head. Brr. The fire dragon screamed in pain. A flaming wound split open on its head. It opened its bloody mouth and wanted to spit out dragon breath. The colorful chains on its body glowed, and the dragon breath was extinguished before it could form. List had already launched a fierce attack. Waves of fire warrior energy crazily slashed the evil fire dragon's head and body. The wound continued to split open. Countless sparks shot out and fell into the bottomless abyss of the volcano. List and the evil fire dragon both stood on a cliff that was like a springboard. One sword. One sword. One sword after another. The evil fire dragon's body gradually became tattered. List still did not relax and continued to attack crazily. Until the Ice Soul Dragon Slaying Sword, which was formed by the power of fate, was shattered. It once again turned into illusory smoke and wrapped around List's body. At this time, the evil fire dragon completely collapsed. Rumble. The volcano trembled as if it would erupt at any time. The cliff continued to collapse and flames shot everywhere. After an unknown amount of time, on the broken cliff where the volcano was on the verge of erupting, a newborn fire dragon slowly condensed from the collapsed corpse of the evil fire dragon. When the little fire dragon saw List, it immediately rushed over excitedly. It rushed to List's feet and let out a cheerful cry, roar, roar, roar. It put its head on List's head and motioned for him to ride on it. List rode on the little fire dragon. The little fire dragon flapped its wings and rushed out of the volcano. At the same time, the volcano completely collapsed. Then, a huge pillar of magma, accompanied by billowing black smoke, shot into the sky. Brr. The little fire dragon shouted. List turned his head to look at the doomsday scene behind him. He could not help but laugh loudly, ha ha. In the next moment, the scene in front of him twisted like water. He suddenly found that he had returned from the spiritual illusory world to the real world. He was still riding on Leo's dragon-tooth platform, while Leo had already fallen to the ground and was snoring away. Sitting on Leo's body, List felt as if their fates were intertwined. It was as if the Leo in front of him had the same blood flowing in his veins and shared the same frequency of thought. Is this the Dragon Knight? Chapter 656. Leo was snoring loudly on the ground. List was a little reluctant to move his butt away from the dragon tooth platform. Using the connection of the platform, the feeling of fates blending, blood flowing, and thoughts synchronizing was too great. This was the Dragon Knight. It wasn't just a man riding a dragon, but a man and a dragon sharing the same fate. It was as if he had opened up his heart to Leo, and Leo had given everything to him. There were no reservations, no suspicions, only the harmony of the soul. It was said to be a man and a dragon, but they were actually one. The dragon's fighting energy was the cement, and their souls were the steel bars. A bridge spanned from north to south, and the natural moat became a path. The huge barrier between humans and dragons had completely disappeared when he was riding a dragon. Dragon Knight. The greatest goal of my life has finally been achieved today. He suddenly remembered the verse Lu Zhishan had written when he passed away in water margin, and he couldn't help but chant, "I never cultivated good karma in my life, I only loved to kill and set fire." Suddenly I loosened the golden rope and broke the jade lock. Qiantang River's tide came, and today I know who I am. Of course. He didn't comprehend parinirvana like Lu Zhishan and returned to the pure land of bliss. He just felt it, and only today did he know how great it was to ride a dragon. It was a pity that Leo had fainted due to the effects of the enchanting dragon's soul fruit. There was no way to immediately bring him to roam the skies. He could only slowly savor the thrill of riding a dragon. But at this moment, the fighting energy in his body suddenly surged. His heart moved. He quickly left Leo's dragon tooth platform and jumped off. Suddenly, he felt a sense of emptiness all over his body, and the harmonious feeling of being one with the dragon instantly faded away. However, he could still feel that Leo still had a lingering concern in his heart. After riding a dragon once, his soul had crossed a line once. Nothing could be changed. Just like a phone connected to Wi-Fi and remembered the password, unless the password was changed, it could be reconnected as long as it was near. Unless List abused Leo, Leo wouldn't be able to change the password. And he wouldn't casually abandon Leo, a fire dragon with unlimited potential. A day on a dragon, a lifetime on a dragon. He shook his head. Suppressing his desire to ride a dragon again, List examined his body. His combat aura had suddenly surged. It seems that because of the spiritual battle earlier, my combat aura has reacted. Is this the perfect combat aura reward from the smoke mission? He concentrated and summoned, and the smoke mission quickly appeared. Mission completed. Reward, perfect advanced chi. As expected, he had already completed the quest, and he received the reward almost at the same time that he rode on the dragon. Or, it could be said that the prerequisite for riding a dragon was to have a perfect high-level warrior energy. Under the influence of the smoke quest and the assistance of the enchanting dragon fruit, he was able to kill little fire dragon Leo's evil thoughts at the same time that his warrior energy reached the perfect level and successfully rode on the dragon. Just as he was about to look at the new mission, the Do Chi in his body surged again, diverting his attention. The smoke also quickly dissipated. He had no choice but to focus on dealing with the changes in his body. His Do Chi kept surging, stimulating and improving the strength of his body. Soon he felt hungry and tired. Fortunately, List had prepared enough potions when he returned this time. He grabbed a handful of potions and swallowed them on the spot. When the potions entered his stomach, they quickly turned into surging magic power and replenished his dried-up cells. Then they were refined into Do Chi and continued to improve his body. Then he started to swallow the World of Warcraft meat in big mouthfuls to increase the nutrients in his body. Just like that. After swallowing a total of 50 potions, 5 black nightshade potions, and an entire cow's worth of World of Warcraft meat, his body's needs were finally satisfied. His Do Chi had completely calmed down, but there was an explosive power hidden in his body. It was as if his entire body had been opened up. Drawing the Ice Soul Dragon Slaying Sword, he directly used the Burning Red Sun Rising Fire secret manual. He used the basic moves and charged up moves one after another to experience the current state of his body. He circulated his Do Chi and used his combat skills without any hesitation. Every detail of his body was under his control. Putting away his sword, he looked at his slender fingers, which had both beauty and strength. He couldn't help but feel high-spirited. Is this the true meaning of a perfect level Sky Knight? Perhaps in terms of total Do Chi and explosive power, a perfect level Sky Knight wasn't much stronger than a Sword Saint level Sky Knight. But in terms of the details of his body, he was far better than a Sword Saint. It could be said that a Sword Saint could use 80% of their body's strength, and a perfect level Sky Knight could use 120% of their strength. Next, I have to find a way to obtain a Do Chi cultivation secret manual and completely perfect the knight cultivation system. After all, the requirements for a dragon knight to ride a dragon are too harsh. I can rely on the enchanting dragon soul fruit to ride a dragon, but my descendants may not be able to. The Grand Duchy of Sapphire didn't have a Do Chi cultivation secret manual. He could only snatch it from the mainland kingdoms. Liszt was more optimistic about Marquis Nuteo. He was lucky to defeat him in the previous battle, but he wasn't able to capture him alive. The next time the expansion order was issued, he could capture Marquis Nuteo alive in one go and force him to hand over the Do Chi cultivation secret manual. Leo was still unconscious. Liszt sat cross-legged at the side and called out the smoke mission again. Mission. Obviously you have successfully ridden a dragon and become a real dragon knight. You can roam the world's generals, but it is undeniable that Leo is still young and has no clue about the next step of cultivation. Please restrain your mood of showing off and explore the next step of cultivation in a low-key manner. Reward, 1 magic shooter. He was pleasantly surprised. He didn't expect that Chi would be promoted to magic shooter just after he became a dragon knight. Originally, he thought that Chi would need at least a year and a half before she could break through to magic shooter. After all, she relied on the power of the mermaid's tears to touch the magic net. However, he carefully read the mission again and restrained his surprise. What does it mean to explore the next step of cultivation in a low-key manner? Does it mean that I have to explore the cultivation method to complete the mission? If I can't explore the next step of cultivation in a year and a half, doesn't that mean that Chi can't advance to magic shooter? No matter what, he had to wait for Leo to wake up first and then try to explore the cultivation method. He was already riding a dragon. What was there to worry about not being able to explore the cultivation method? He got up and walked down the mountain all the way to the beach. He found that no matter how far away they were, there was a strong spiritual connection between him and Leo. Although it wasn't as strong as when he was riding a dragon, it was still far stronger than the contractual connection between him and the elves. As long as he thought about it, he could experience the beautiful dream that Leo had when he was asleep. He dreamed that he became a powerful fire dragon, robbed a city of wealth, and brought it back to his volcanic nest, still with evil thoughts. It seems that I have to cut his heart often to prevent evil thoughts from growing. After all, I am a knight full of a sense of justice, and my mount can't be an evil dragon. Full of love and peace, protecting justice and fairness, these are the true virtues of a knight. He was in a good mood, and the scenery of dusk was exceptionally beautiful. You're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.